Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Thursday. Brian, the only thing we got on the docket for today is a free-for-all mailbag coming a
That's
day
right.
early. I love it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Here are the options today because we're really hoping to finish up the magazine today, all the writing and everything today, and then tomorrow we're hoping to get it all laid out, finalize the proofing. And so I was like, either A, we're not doing a show today, or B, we're going to do a mailbag, so I don't have to worry about doing prep. We'll let you guys do all the prep. But those have been great this summer. Part of the reason, honestly, Trev, part of the reason that we're doing a mailbag today is because of how amazing the IB community has been this offseason. I mean, we're a week away from fall camp, and we've yet to have the conversation that we have every year in July, in June and July. Like, dude, we need to consider not doing mailbags or buy-sell holds because it's getting kind of lame. It's like the same question. You guys have been so amazing this offseason with just constantly keeping things fresh, looking at things from different perspectives, responding to what's going on, with the team. You guys have been great. So we're excited about it. And I was like, dude, let's do a mailbag today, and then we'll see what we do tomorrow. But we're ready to rock and roll, Trev. Going to be a fun day. Somebody asked, Tristan asked, I believe. Let me find his question. He asked about can we get a sneak preview of the magazine? So I don't know that we'll do one on the show. Maybe. We'll see. But now that I think about it, maybe we might put a little, 3-4 pages out, Trev, when it's all laid out, and maybe this weekend, and give people a little bit of a sneak preview. So, yeah, it'll be fun. We'll see. But y'all know the deal on Mailbag, right? Put MB or a mailbag emoji there, and you can ask whatever you want to ask relating to Notre Dame football, college football, Notre Dame recruiting in general, anything along those lines you guys want to ask about today. You determine what we're going to talk about. And Trev, I'm ready to go, dude. I can't believe camp's a week away. Oh, we dropped an intel piece last night, by the way. Some of the intel I've gathered on the team as we get ready for fall camp. I talked to quarterback Snowline last night. I'm going to drop some intel this evening on the receivers, running backs, and tight ends. Trev, you and I talked about the intel that I've been able to gather from different sources. And then some point in time this weekend, I'll have something out on the defense, but still waiting to talk to a couple different people to get a little bit more on the defense. And so it's that time of year for that too. So lots going on in IB land, but I'm ready to get rocking and rolling, Trev, because I know there's some really good questions in there.
Absolutely. I'm ready to dive into this thing, man. Absolutely ready. From Sign Cosine Tangent, is your expectation of Will Black that of a freshman Joe Alt? Some ups and downs with some sacks given up, but very high upside.
That's exactly it. I mean, this is what I put in the intel piece last night, Tristan, is basically this. It was, I believe that the Notre Dame staff they understand. Look, he's a redshirt freshman that's never played a snap at left tackle in college football. He's going to give up some plays. There's going to be times when he lunges as a D tackle and guy runs by him and CJ's got to, maybe CJ gets sacked or CJ's got to throw it away or he's got to step out into the pocket or something like that. But they're willing to live with that, I believe, as long as they can limit those plays. You can't have it every third pass play, but the dominance is there and the upside is there that they think that it's worth it. If 3% of he's got a 3 to 5% higher mistake rate than the other linemen, you live with it because he's so talented that he's going to make up for some of those other plays. It's exactly what Gerby Lambert was last year, Trev. I mean that's what they were willing to live with from Gerby last year. It's like, look, he's going to make some mistakes. He's going to put his head down and take a bad angle, and the D tackle's just going to slant over top of him and beat him up in the hole and get to the play. And that happened last year with Gerby. But then on the very next two plays, he's going to take that same guy and drive him 4 yards off the ball and open up a giant run lane for Jeremiah Leverage and Ryan Price to run through. You live with that, and they lived with that with Joe Alt in 2021, a little bit in 2022 as well. But you're okay with that because the other stuff is worth it. It's like a young quarterback. It's like, hey, he's going to make some mistakes and he's going to miss some throws, but he's still our guy because the plays he's going to make, the other guys just can't make. And so, yes, that's exactly what I think that one's going to be. Hey, aloha, my friend. Thank you very much. Glad to have you joining us from Hawaii. What time is it in Hawaii? Is it like 7 a.m. in Hawaii right now? Aren't they like 5 hours behind us? My man, good morning to you, sir. Aloha. We got another question, Trev. We got one from Tristan, hooked us up with a lot of great questions at the beginning. Let's get one from Salty Virginia Peanuts.
Pete Bavacqua is confident that the Notre Dame USC rivalry will return soon, perhaps by 2030. Do you share his confidence, and how high of a priority is it for you?
Yes, it'll come back at some point in time. I mean, both sides have said it. I think what it's going to come down to is when Lincoln Riley's done at USC. That's really what it comes down to. I think he's the driver of this of this decision to not play the rivalry. It's something he talked about, I think, going back to his first year. He started talking about it. Oh, I love the rivalry, but. There's no but. It's either you love it or you don't. I mean, it's absurd. And this notion of, now here's the thing. How high of a priority is it for you? It depends. It depends. Like, listen, I don't care about the USC Notre Dame rivalry coming back if this is going to be a game that's played in the first 3 weeks of the season. I don't care. I don't care. That's not a real rivalry, Trevor. Who in college football plays their rival in the first 3 weeks of the season or the first month of the season? Who plays their number one rival that early in the season? Yeah, but it's a non-conference game. Okay. So is Florida State. So is Clemson, South Carolina. So is Louisville, Kentucky. There's a lot of non-conference games that are and when are all those games played, Trev? I don't have the schedule in front of me. When are all those games played? Those non-conference rivalry games? When are those played?
November. Final week.
Oh, that's right. Last freaking weekend of the season. Trev, how many games does the SEC play now in the regular season?
Just in general?
Is it 9? Right?
Yeah.
Oh, and they still find a way to play that. That's interesting. So, yeah, it's pure cowardice. There's no excuse not to play this game at the last week of the season. And listen, if it's too hard for the Big Ten to schedule in October, Notre Dame and USC play each other the same weekend every year. If it's in Notre Dame, it's mid-October. If it's at USC, it's the end of the season. If it's too hard to fit that October game in there, then let's go back to the way it used to be and play at the end of the regular season. Playing in November. They used to play the game in December back when the season started a lot later. So there's a real easy fix. Big Ten, you guys know, last week of the year, we played Notre Dame every year, so plan accordingly. And then you can go play UC Davis and the Sisters of the Poor in the other 2 non-conference games, and no one's going to care because you're going to have the Big Ten schedule and you're going to have Notre Dame. And you handle your business against that schedule, you're in. You go 10-2 against that schedule, you're in. That's the thing. They don't have to go 11-1 against that schedule. Yeah, but what if we lose 2 games in conference and lose to Notre Dame also? Then you're not a playoff team. Like, seriously, you're not a playoff team. If you well, there may be a year that they get 3 of Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Michigan, and name, let's pretend Penn State doesn't stink. And then Notre Dame, but man, what if we lose 3 of those games? So basically you're a 500 team against top 15 teams. Well, guess what? Then you're not a playoff team. It's not that difficult. And now you know where your program is because you learn some things about yourself. Perfect example is Notre Dame last year, Trev. Now, do we think Notre Dame should have been in the playoff? Yes, we do. Do we think Notre Dame would have got into the playoff and handled their business and dominated maybe all but 2 or 3 teams in the playoff? Yeah, we think they would have. Say 4. I think they would have played really good games against against Indiana. I think the Notre Dame Miami game would have been competitive. I think the Ohio State and Oregon games would be competitive, back and forth games. I think Notre Dame smacks everybody else's in the playoff last year, including Ole Miss. So, but here's the reality. Notre Dame has to look in the mirror and say, we didn't handle our business. We now know where we got to get better. And so they've done things to make their program better. And that's what USC should do. Hey, if you're not good enough to be better than 9-3 with Notre Dame on your schedule, then guess what? Your program isn't strong enough. So go out and make it better to where you can handle your business in those games. That's that competitive spirit that we've completely lost. And it's ironic that a lot of the guys crying and whining about how difficult the schedule is, they have one thing in common. Do you know what that one thing in common is? They all coached at USC or coach at USC, right? Lane Kiffin's crying about it. Steve Sarkisian's crying about it. And now Lincoln Riley's crying about it. Do you know what's sad? Two of those three guys coach for one of the most competitive coaches in the business in Pete Carroll. Never heard Pete Carroll crying about having to play all over the country. Never heard. I mean, they would go good on good almost every day in practice because he cared about competition. It's pretty sad, to be honest with you, and it's soft. And Pete Sampson from The Athletic had an interview with Pete Bavacqua, and he talked about how he actually talked to Chris Conte, the AD at Texas, and he's like, we're playing Notre Dame. So, again, this is coaches being soft. This is, you know what I mean? And hopefully Chris Conte sticks to that. And, man, it's disappointing. But if the rivalry's if the only way to bring the rivalry back is it gets played in September, I'm good. I don't need it. Because here's what's going to happen. If Notre Dame beats USC, it'll be just like 2018 Michigan. By the time we get into the year, that game doesn't mean a whole lot because it was played in September. So we're not going to worry about it. But if Notre Dame loses that game, then they're going to look back and be like, yes, I know that Notre Dame has crushed everyone they've played, but we as a committee went all the way back to week 1 and evaluated that film for Notre Dame to determine that they're not a playoff team. Hey, did you guys evaluate the Florida State Alabama? I don't want to hear about that game. That's a non-conference game. We don't care about that. Alabama did this, and this. They beat a bunch of SEC teams that were ranked at the time that are no longer ranked because they weren't that good to begin with. And they played a really good 5-7 Auburn team down to the wire. Okay, so they belong in. But we did have to go back and reevaluate that first game of the year with Notre Dame and Miami. It's nonsense. So why would Notre Dame put themselves in that type of situation? A game they're going to get no credit for when they win, and a game where if they lose, no one will forget it. No one will let it go. You remember this, Trev, in 2018 when we're getting ready for the playoff, and you had people like Kirk freaking Herbstreit talking about how Michigan should be in the playoff ahead of Notre Dame because that game was played all the way back in September, and Michigan's a different team now. They weren't, and Ohio State fortunately exposed them as not a better team by destroying them in the last game of the year. But do you remember that? We had to listen to that for like 3 weeks.
Yep.
Despite the fact Notre Dame was undefeated, had blown out a ranked Syracuse team who took Clemson down to the wire, had gone on the road and beat Northwestern, who was ranked by double digits. They've blown everybody out, but we had to sit there and listen to this. Well, Michigan's a better team now. They should be in over Notre Dame because that game was played all the way in September. That's exactly how it'll be with Notre Dame USC when Notre Dame wins. But when Notre Dame loses, that's the only game anybody cares about. So why would Notre Dame subject themselves to that? Listen, here's the deal. USC chose to back out. They chose to back out. They can lie and spin all they want. And by the way, Lincoln Riley is a liar for him to say, well, we wanted to play that game, but some things that were said weren't followed up on. Yes, by you. Because Notre Dame agreed to all the BS you wanted to agree. That's why you guys pivoted to, we just found out about this clause in the playoff, and that's our final straw. Because Notre Dame had given in to everything that USC wanted, which I'm not happy about, by the way. And then when USC pivoted to that, Notre Dame was like, screw it, we're done. Let's go play BYU. It was very obvious in Notre Dame's leadership that USC was going to keep moving the goalposts and force us into this situation. And so they said, peace out, let's go play BYU, which they announced minutes after the USC rivalry was ended. They're the ones that ended it. Let them be the ones now to come back. You have bargaining power, in my opinion. I just hope Pete Bavacqua has the stones to use it, to be honest with you. You want this rivalry back? Because I know your boosters do. I know that people around the program do. It's just this coward that doesn't want it back. Okay, you want it back, then we're going to do one of two things. We're going to either play it the way we've always played it, like in the last 50 years, home game in October, road game in November for us, or every year we're doing it the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That's your two options. You want to bring it back? We'll sign on the dotted line today. We'll sign a lifetime contract with those terms. But that's it. This whole we're playing in September nonsense is for the birds. Because now you've limited yourself quite a bit. If that's the case, Trev, because now that's one less weekend in September where you can go out and play a Texas, an Alabama, a Florida, and Auburn, teams that, Notre Dame is scheduled in the next 6-7 years. It's now harder to fit that in without it being like last year where your 3 of your first games are just gauntlets where nobody else has to play. And other teams can have a rough September and as long as they go handle their business. They get all this praise and hype about how good they actually are now that they're winning in October and November. But as we saw last year, it doesn't matter what Notre Dame does after the first 2 games. If they lose 2 games in September, that's all people are going to hold against them for the rest of the year. Well, they play ACC teams. Well, we're not trying to play all ACC teams in November. We'd like to play some of y'all in November, and that's why we want to have USC in November. That's what I think Notre Dame should do. And so if USC's not willing to do that, then tell them to pound sand and keep playing San Jose State and Fresno State and teams like that and make no money and then cry about, how you can't afford to pay for back-to-back big-time classes like Notre Dame can. That's what I would say. You want to make money? Let's make some magic. Let's have that game after every Saturday after Thanksgiving. Let's do it. But they won't do that.
I mean, if USC wants to be taken seriously in any way, in my mind, is they play Notre Dame on an annual basis. They're not a playoff caliber team, despite what people want you to believe. I don't view them as one. I know FanDuel has them as one of the odds, one of the more favored teams to go out and win the national championship this year. I don't see that coming to fruition. About the rivalry specifically, Salty, I'm confident it'll come back at some point in time, but how quickly it comes back will just be around Lincoln Riley. That's where it is. I think that he's a coward. I think that falls in line with other people that have come through USC. I also think to a degree that falls in line with Tony Petitti in the Big Ten, because all the non-conference rivalry games that you listed off, none of them were in the Big Ten. Talked about Clemson, South Carolina, Louisville, Kentucky, teams like that. The Big Ten biggest rivals are in conference. Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. There's like the Penn State USC or the Penn State Ohio State rivalry when James Franklin was there was very much like an Alabama LSU type of interconference rivalry, things like that. But I just don't think Tony Petitti really gives a rip about out-of-conference rivalry games. I think that's where he's at because the majority of the Big Ten outside of the top 4 kind of suck right now. Then they don't have rivalry games that are worth the salt. I don't think people care about Maryland's out-of-conference rivals or Rutgers or Northwesterns.
Well, look, Trev, most conferences don't have out-of-conference rivals. I understand that.
Sure.
But there are some that do, and there's a precedent set for it. And the precedent is they play the last Saturday of September. And guess what their leagues do? They work around it. They say, hey, this is your rivalry, then we'll give you a conference game early in the year. We'll give you a conference game a week earlier than we normally would. And that's fine. Conferences work around Notre Dame's schedule all the time. I mean, for a long time, remember the ACC gave like every team that Notre Dame played in the ACC a bye the week before they played Notre Dame. Remember that, Trev? Like that went on for a while. And it's like, oh, you can't manipulate your schedules to fit Notre Dame in? Oh, yeah, you can if it matters to you. And to your point about Tony Petitti, again, if he was smart, I think he would understand that, like, dude, this could be gold for us and our TV partners because we're an NBC team. They also have Fox and CBS. Notre Dame is an NBC team. Is this not like the perfect Saturday after Thanksgiving? We get Ohio State and Michigan at noon, and then at 3:30 we kick off Notre Dame in USC when it's in South Bend. And when it's in LA, it's the primetime game. Like, do you know how much money you would make for your conference if that was going on every Saturday after Thanksgiving? Every year, your TV partners are getting Notre Dame and USC every year on Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, 2 days after Thanksgiving. So you get the game and the greatest transcontinental rivalry of all time. Sorry, I couldn't help myself, Trev. You get those 2 games every Saturday after Thanksgiving. Are you kidding me? And guess what? When USC wins, which they will eventually win that game. I know it's been a while, but there will be times they'll win that game. And there's going to be some point in time down the road, 10, 20 years, whenever, when USC gets back to kind of having some real good success in that series. What does that do for you as you're getting ready to go into the playoff? Now, the other part of this too, Trev, is I think when they expand to a 2014 playoff, and I think we were asked a question about this the other day. I'm not sure if we got to it or not, but when we got to the playoff, it was a question we had the other day, and the question was, I think who was it? I think the Big Ten had talked about getting rid of their conference championship game when the playoff expands to 24 teams, which I sadly think it's going to ultimately do. I think that is when all this rivalry comes back, and that is when I think USC, because I think that's when USC loses all leverage to play the game in November, because it's fair to say, okay, why should we play a big game like that every year right before the Big Ten championship game? Because again, Michigan and Ohio State do it, Auburn and Alabama do it, Florida State do it. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot, Clemson, South Carolina do it, and there's a lot of years both of those teams are really good, or one of those teams is getting ready to go play in their conference championship game. That's life. So it's a weak argument, but it's at least a weak argument that you're like, there is some merit to that. You've played this long gauntlet, and then you got to play a really good Notre Dame team right before you play in your conference championship game. Okay, I don't buy it, but it's fair. Now USC had to do that before. They played Notre Dame in 2022 right before the conference championship. Do you look at that and say, well, yeah, and that's why we got our butts kicked the next week? Like, okay, you played Utah. You know what I mean? But so the point being, Trev, once that goes away, once the conference championship games go away, and to me, that's the only benefit to a 2014 playoff is we can finally get rid of these conference championships, which I used to love. But now in these expanded big 16, 18-team leagues, they're utterly useless, in my opinion. They lose all leverage to not playing that game late in the season. All leverage. Because, hey, look, you played the last game of the year. Guys, you're going to get 2-3 weeks off before the playoff starts. At least 2 weeks off. So no excuse not to play it. Yeah.
Agreed.
So real quick, Trev, this question just came in, but it is related to what we're talking about, and I don't want to keep going back and forth to USC. We may later, but this one just came in, so let's address this one real quick.
From Sine Cosine Tangent, why does USC come to South Bend in October? When did that change, and why was that coach soft back then?
I don't think it was softness. I think it made a lot of sense. So it was John McKay, and I'm trying to find the year. When did USC change to playing Notre Dame in October? Let me look it up real quick and try to get a sense in that. But looks like it was 1959. Let's see here is what AI said, but AI, you always got to verify because it spits out a lot of nonsense, I have found. But yeah, it looks like nope, it was not 1959 because that game was played in November. See, this is why you always verify, Trev. You always got to trust but verify. But let's see here. That game was in November. 59 was in November. It was John McKay. I do know that. I'm trying to find when that happened. So it looks like it was 1961 is when the first time that Notre Dame and USC played in October. And it was John McKay that wanted that. And essentially playing late in the year in South Bend was a battle. The fields were bad condition by then. It was cold. And I just don't think he wanted to keep playing a game later in the year. And so they moved it. Now, at the time, that game was a little bit earlier in the year because college football used to start a lot later than it does now. But for USC, that was game 4. But they also, played 10 games that year. Only 10 didn't play as long as seasons. But that's basically why, Trev, they moved that game up. Was because, they didn't want to go out and play in bad weather. Also, you got to remember, travel back then into cold weather, let's be honest, was a little bit more risky than it is now. Whereas Notre Dame flying out to LA wasn't necessarily bad. Now they had to fly back, but there's a ton of reasons why that game was moved. I don't like it. I think it should be played last game of the regular season. And I would have complained about it back then if I was a thing and if the internet was a thing and podcasts were a thing or whatever, I would have complained about it back then. Like, why are we doing this? But it is what it is. And USC had a little bit more leverage at the time to do that. They were a better program, than Notre Dame was. That was kind of when Notre Dame was struggling. That was right before Coach Parsegian came to Notre Dame. So that's why it was back in the 60s. 1962 was the first time. Now, maybe 1959 is when they agreed, and it couldn't start till 1962. But 1962 was the first time they played early in the season, from what I could find. So if somebody in the chat wants to correct that. they can chime in. But from what I just found, it looks like 1963 was the first time that happened. So I'm going to look here real quick and just to verify. Yeah. So like when when the rivalry started, it was December 4th, November 26th, December, November, December, November, December, November, December, November, December, November, December, November. So it was back and forth. When they play in Notre Dame, it would be a couple weeks earlier in November. And the first time that game got played in October, was 1961. So, that was correct. See, this is why you don't ever trust AI, guys. You always got to verify the information. So, that was the first time it was played.
Good deal.
Yeah, good question so far. We got started off pretty quick today with some fired up questions, man.
Another one from Sign. Hypothetically, Notre Dame gives up the naming rights to Notre Dame Stadium. What is the minimum dollar amount?
I mean, Trev, if a little tiny patch costs you $18 to $20 million a year, at least 4 or 5 times that to rename the stadium, in my opinion. Now, again, that's minimum. I don't know what people pay for NFL naming rights, but if you're gonna sell out your soul, which to me, the patch, I don't like it, but I also not going to lose my mind over it. I don't like it, but I think it was tastefully done. It's not some crazy, like do you ever watch the old Fiesta Bowls back in the day, Trev? And they had like those giant Fiesta Bowl patches on their jerseys. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's not something like that with like the big Tostitos thing or the big, the Sun thing and, the Tempe thing. And it is that's college football. You can't be like, hey, I want Notre Dame to spend as much as any team in the country to make sure their roster's loaded. Then be like, well, hold on a second. I know that you can basically get your rev share in this one deal and you got to wear a patch that big, but no, don't touch the uniform. I don't like it. But if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it. You get this huge deal that basically pays your rev share for your football team. I mean, for your entire sports program every year. And you have to put a little patch that to me it's not gaudy. It's not obnoxious. I mean, maybe they could have just done it where you just put the letters on. I saw somebody on Twitter put that, but it honestly, it doesn't aesthetically bother me beyond just, I'd rather not have one. And to me, it's one of those things of the Notre Dame has not always had the same jersey. They haven't always had the same style. They haven't always had the same design. Trevor, they haven't even always had the same color. The blue has changed over the years. The helmet's changed. It's now gold. So like, as long as you're sticking to the general concept of what Notre Dame should be, gold helmet, blue and gold and green are your only colors you use. I don't want to see the all black nonsense. I can live with the patch. How's it any different when they have an Adidas or an Under Armour patch on their jersey? Like that, you know what I mean? Like you've already allowed sponsors to put patches on your jersey. It's called the Under Armour logo. You know what I mean? So like, I don't love it, but it's going to get him $20 million a year. It's with a company whose president is clearly very, very pro Notre Dame. His oldest daughter plays lacrosse for Notre Dame. So, and it's also with a company that I don't think, look, I mean, I feel like I've paid the guy's salary with the interest I've paid on my student loans over the last 15 years for Angelina student loans. But I joke, but I've never had any bad dealings with them. I haven't heard of any stories about this being some sort of company you want to partner with. I'm glad they didn't go with like an alcohol company. I mean, there's a lot of things that this could have been bad. And in this instance, SoFi is really short and small and easy. And, it is what it is. So I have no problem with that. Changing the name of the stadium to me is what has the stadium been called from its founding? Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah. So
it's looked different, but it's still Notre Dame Stadium. That would bother me. And if you're going to rename it, you say, kind of like what Bama did, Lou Holtz Field at Notre Dame Stadium. You name it after a legend. You don't name it after somebody gave you a bunch of money. Unfortunately, I won't be surprised if Notre Dame eventually sells that because there's value in it. I would rather see ads on the padding than that. I mean, again, I don't love it, but I'd rather see that than changing the name of Notre Dame Stadium. But I'll assure you guys of this. No, if they ever sell the name of the stadium, there's one thing I can promise. In every single piece of published literature that Irish Breakdown does, and in every single podcast we ever do, it will be Notre Dame Stadium. I can promise you that. But hopefully they don't sell out for that. But like, here's the deal. Let's say some company says, hey, we're going to pay you $75 million a year to have the Notre Dame Stadium at whatever company. You think Notre Dame's going to turn that down? Heck no. Sadly.
With anything, there's a line that you don't cross. And I think that's renaming the stadium. That's my opinion. The patches, I'm going to be honest, some people are going to like this, some people aren't. It just does not bother me. Like I said it when the news broke. If given the choice between the two, I wouldn't have the patch on there, but it's not something that I'm going to lose sleep over. I'm not going to stop watching Notre Dame football because there's a SoFi patch the third of the size of an iPhone on the shoulder of the jersey. Like, that just doesn't bother me.
Right.
The one thing that I've noticed through this process of just the new age of college football and the changes going on at Notre Dame is the Notre Dame fan base as a whole, which I am a part of, is a very interesting fan base to dive into. Mm-hmm. Because it's, in one hand, it's, we want a practice facility that looks like the new Avengers facility in upstate New York. But if you remove the wooden bleachers from the stadium, it's a travesty. They want Notre Dame to be able to compete and not be like Clemson and Dabo Swinney. And then they do something to compete in this new age of college football. And it's like blasphemous.
Well, in fairness, Trevor, the wooden bleachers are why Brian Kelly could never win a championship.
That's
apparently.
Fair. That's fair.
So
I guess I didn't factor that in.
I mean, I know they sold out every single game he coached in with those wooden bleachers, but clearly that impacted the play of his football team.
That's a good point. No, that's
fair. How many 5-star recruits said, hey man, I love everything about your program, coach, but those wooden bleachers that we can't see during the game, that's a bridge too far.
No, that's fair.
I'm going to go to LSU.
But
until you're the coach at LSU, then I'm going to start picking Notre
Dame. Yeah. Here's where I'm at with the jersey patch. It's estimated $18 to $20 million a year. Notre Dame made $20 million in the 2024 college football playoffs. And now they're going to make that on an annual basis before the playoffs by just putting a patch right here.
Yep.
Like, that's where we're at in the sport. Love it or hate it, that's where we are. And so I'm not in the camp of people that assume that now all patches are going to look like, professional sports leagues overseas that have 97 different patches on their uniforms. I don't think it'll get to that. I don't, but we'll see.
It better not. Now that's key. Because here's the thing. I don't think the SoFi patch takes away from the uniqueness of the uniform look. You start looking like the WNBA, where you've got like 4 or 5 of these big gaudy patches, or professional soccer sports or anything like that. Now we've got a problem.
Sure.
But I want to bring this picture up right here and show this. You see that picture, Trev? What's that thing right there on CJ Carr's jersey from last year?
Yeah.
That is an Under Armour logo. Has nothing to do with Notre Dame other than they have a deal where they sponsor Notre Dame. They give them deals and all that. Notre Dame, but they pay Notre Dame to build their jerseys, and part of the deal is they get to put their patch on it. So they've already done this. They've done this since when Lou Holtz was the coach. They had an Adidas, I believe, if I remember correctly, an Adidas patch, or was a Champion patch on their uniform. I forget which one. I have to go back and find some photos. They've already been doing this. It's just a little bit different form now than it used to be. And so that, again, I don't like it. I'm not saying I love it. I'm not saying, hey, this is awesome. I'm not one of those people. It's a necessary evil, and you want Notre Dame to compete. This is what they got to do. Hey, I want them to compete, but I don't want them to do anything that, whatever. Like you said, the scoreboard it's a bridge too far. I've said this before, man. If scoreboards were a thing when Knute Rockne built Notre Dame Stadium, I promise you Notre Dame would have had the biggest, most gaudy sports scoreboard around, based on everything I have read and know of Knute Rockne.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, he was very innovative in a lot of ways. They would have had a scoreboard. So that I'm okay with. I do feel like things that have always been a certain way, like naming the stadium, like things like that, I don't that bothers me a little bit. So it'd be a bridge too far. It would. But again, they've already sold patches on their jerseys. They've been doing it for decades. There's just one more. So, yes, M. Daly, it was champion. That's right. Lou Holtz was champion. I think Adidas came down the way. But anyway, so yeah, I love your point, Trev. Like with anything, there are lines you can cross in the SoFi patch. As much as I don't like it, it has nothing to do with SoFi. It just I don't love that. It is what it is. Just I don't want to see too many.
Sure.
I just don't want to see too many. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather see them put advertising on the padding in the stadium than to see them do that. I mean, look, you can sell advertising on the scoreboard. You can do all these kind of things. You want to rename the practice facilities, the whatever IBAR practice facilities, the I don't know, the Chipotle, practice facility, whatever. You want to rename the indoor facility, the whatever company indoor facility, whatever. I mean, the Shields Hall, who's it named after? It's named after a family that donated a good amount of money to have their name on it. And you know what? Good for them. I don't care about that. The Goog is named after a person. So I don't care about that. It just, there's something sacred about the place you play your games. And that's just why it's off limits for me as far as the name change. I mean, is it going to be the University of Notre Dame? Let me think of something. The McDonald's, University of Notre Dame, the First Source Bank, University of Notre Dame. No, there's just certain lines you don't cross. A patch on a jersey is not that line for me.
Agreed.
I think my beef would have been there would be companies I'd say that was a bad idea. But sometimes it's perfect. I mean, as Vince showed yesterday, I mean, don't you think it'd be perfect to have like a Charmin patch on USC's uniforms? I think that'd be amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great. From Salty, with the 105 scholarship limit, 5 for 5, and the size of the most recent Notre Dame recruiting class is taken into account, what will the size of the 2027 class be?
I don't think any of those things impact the size of the 27 class because the 105 scholarship limit has already been factored into the size of the class. The 5 for 5 will have no impact on the size of the class. The 5 for 5 impacts, it might impact classes down the road, but you don't have to bring a guy back for his fifth year. I mean, they already process guys out to a degree. Trevor and I have broken it down, Salty. The number of players that impacts is very small. It's Drake Bowen, it's Christian Gray, it's Jordan Faison, it's Luke Talich, it's Elijah Hughes, and I think there was one other. I can't remember who that was. But like a lot of the other guys that could take advantage of that fifth year already have a fifth year option. Jaden Alsbury already had a fifth year option. Cooper Flanagan already had a fifth year option because of last year's injury. I mean, there's already those guys. And so, but not all the fifth years came back in the past either. And they won't now. It just means they have a fifth year to play and they can play that somewhere else. Well, if they're graduated, if the new rules pass and they're graduated, they have to sit out a year. So, or if it's the first time they've transferred, they have to sit out a year. So that won't impact a lot. So the size of the class, 23, 25, they're at 23 now. I think they're going to try to add a linebacker and a DB to the class. So I think we'll see him get to 25, at the most 26. That's how that's where I see this class being.
Yeah, and I mean, I've talked before about how, I think a lot of the 5 for 5 impact is going to come on the front end. And I don't think that means that they're going to intentionally add more people to an incoming recruiting class because freshmen can now play and not burn a year of eligibility. Anybody that plays, the playing time is earned. I think we got a question a couple of weeks ago when Brian and I were doing a show, and it was like, is the coaching staff going to feel more pressured to play true freshmen with the 5 for 5? And my answer was no. It's playing time is still earned. You're not going to be put on the field as a true freshman if you're unready to play or you're not sure of your assignment just because the 5 for 5 rule is passed. Playing time is still going to be earned regardless of eligibility standards. So I don't think that's Marcus Freeman is going to continue recruiting the high school level to build the foundation of the team. It's not just now with the 5-for-5, we're going to go and get guys that can play right away. It's if you feel a need and you're a good fit at the university, they'll bring you into the recruiting class.
Yep.
From Levi Perez, do you think Pat Fitzgerald can get Michigan State back to being a respectable program in the Big Ten? And would you like them being a regular rival on Notre Dame's schedule?
Yes and yes. Look, Trev, you and I have talked about that. We think Pat Fitzgerald's a really good fit for Michigan State, of what Michigan State needs to be. Find someone that can is good at evaluating under the radar kids. Find someone that believes in toughness and playing good defense and running the football, which I believe Pat Fitzgerald does. He's a Midwestern guy. He can, he's comfortable recruiting the areas that they need to recruit, and now he's going to have some access to players he couldn't get at Northwestern. So I think those are all things that factor into why I think that was a good hire, why I think the fit is good, as long as they support him, which right now is a challenge, Trev, because right now you don't have a school president or an AD. So there's a lot of question marks there, but as long as those, because here's the thing, Levi, is I don't care how good of a coach you are. If you don't have support from your school, you're just not going to win, especially in today's era. So there is a level of he could be hindered by what's with him in the program. Who's the AD, who's the president. There's apparently like this crazy rogue board member or two that's a problem for the school. And so you've got to get all those things fixed. But as long as there aren't things outside of his control standing in his way like that, I think Pat Fitzgerald can have them back to being a good quality football team. Do I think he's going to get them back to being what they were under Mark D'Antonio during that stretch? No, I don't. Because the unique thing about the Mark D'Antonio era is he really thrived at Michigan State during a time when, number one, Michigan was really down, during a time when Ohio State was kind of rebuilding. And, you had the drama with, Coach Tressel at the end of his career. Then you had the Luke Fickell tenure, and then Ohio State's on probation. There was a year where Ohio State, I think wasn't it 2012 when Ohio State was undefeated? And this didn't really impact Michigan State because they weren't that good that year. But I think 2012, Ohio State went undefeated but didn't play in the Big Ten championship game because they were on probation, so they couldn't play in the postseason. And so, you had a lot of that going on. You had the Penn State drama. I think it wasn't it 2010 when all the stuff really went down, and I think that ended up being Joe Paterno's last year, and I think it was 2011. So Penn State had to deal with all their sanctions and all the stuff they were dealing with. Michigan just sanctioned themselves by hiring Rich Rodriguez and Brady Hoke. It's like self-imposed sanctions. We're going to make ourselves suck by hiring coaches that aren't fits or aren't good coaches. And so they went through a real tough time. There just was a lot kind of going on in the league at the time to where your powerhouses weren't powerhouses. And Mark D'Antonio and his staff, Pat Narduzzi and that group, did a tremendous job of taking advantage. But they were getting some kids out of the state of Michigan that they wouldn't have gotten if Michigan was what it is now, kind of thing. And they took full advantage. And at the time too, you got to remember Notre Dame wasn't very good at the time either. I mean, from in the 90s, like the late 90s, Notre Dame started to dip down in the Bob Davie era. In the 2000s, they were good 3 years in the 2000s, 2002, 2005, and 2006. So you were beating them for kids. I remember them beating Notre Dame for Donnie Corley. There were several kids that they beat Notre Dame for. They got a snowball's chance in heck at beating Notre Dame now for a kid that Notre Dame wants, unless they're just going to say, okay, they're offering you $750,000, we're going to pay you $1.5 million. You just got to buy the kid. It was a perfect storm. And to Coach D'Antonio's credit, he took full advantage of it and built a strong program. And again, they had their up and down years, but overall they were a really strong quality program. Won the Big Ten, played in some big bowl games, won some big bowl games, beat Ohio. And look, and to their credit too, they beat Ohio State a couple times when Urban Meyer was there. They made the college football playoffs in 2015. So all those things, you give them credit for. I don't think Michigan State's going to get back to being that, because the Big Ten is different. Not only is Ohio State really good, and Michigan's at least solid, but you also have Oregon now. You do have USC. It's a deeper league because of what you've added and the powerhouses are kind of back to being powerhouses. Now, I think Coach D'Antonio or Coach Fitzgerald could maybe take advantage of the fact that Penn State's down. So maybe there's some kids from Jersey and Pennsylvania that they can get, or maybe there's some in-state kids that they can beat Pennsylvania for. Remember, Penn State went into Michigan and did really well in the state of Michigan. Kobe King, who was a starting linebacker for them for multiple seasons, is a Michigan kid. So that they had some success in Michigan. Well, maybe now they can flip that and win some of those. But by and large, it's most of the big programs are good, and you've added some big programs. So, but I think they can certainly be a team that every year is 6 to 9 wins, and then they've got that veteran team, and they get the right quarterback, and it's just everything kind of works out perfectly, and they compete for and maybe win the Big Ten once a decade. That could happen. They're kind of like the Virginia Tech of the Big Ten, where you're just going to be competitive every year. And there's going to be years where they don't win the Big Ten championship, but their upset of insert big-time team vaulted another team into the Big Ten championship, so they'll have an impact on who wins the championship. I think that's what Michigan State can be with the right coach. Got to have the right coach, and I think he could be that. As far as the other one, I have always said and will always say that the one Big Ten school that if you could say, Brian, you get to schedule one Big Ten team on your schedule every year for the next 30 years, who do you want it to be? I've said a million times, it would be Michigan State. I'd be okay with Purdue. I'd be fine with Michigan. It is what it is. I don't care about that rivalry as much as a lot of Notre Dame fans, but the Michigan State one to me is the one that I would absolutely 100%, without a doubt, bring back permanently. Love for that rivalry to come back. That's one I don't mind playing every year in September. Why? Because it's not their top rival.
That's a good point.
All right.
We have a Thursday free-for-all mailbag going on here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have Mark on the radio getting us kicked off here. Will Notre Dame's schedule strength shock the media world? In other words, do you see Wisconsin and Michigan State making a bowl game, thus improving Notre Dame's strength of schedule?
Brother, it would take a lot more than Michigan State and Wisconsin for it to shock the college football world. I think when I think shock the college football world, I think one of those teams is like maybe in their conference championship game, or in November playing for a chance to be in it. Let's say let me even see what their schedules are. Let's see here, Michigan State 2026 football schedule. So let's say Michigan State's going into their November 20th matchup Friday night against Oregon, and if they can upset Oregon at home, that gives them an outside shot. They end up getting beat, and it knocks them out. But going to November, if we can win this big game and 2 or 3 upsets happen, maybe we have a shot. Like if that's happening for those two teams, then hey, their schedule's tougher. But for it to be a shock to the college football world, you'd need those two things to happen, with one of them being really good, meaning like 9+ wins. You'd also need your top 3 to be as good as advertised. Like Miami is 12-1, destroys everybody but Notre Dame. BYU handles business in the Big 12. They're 11-1, 12-1. SMU and Miami play each other for the ACC championship. But then you'd also need like either Stanford or North Carolina to have a bounce back year. You'd need Navy to be like in the conversation for the G5 playoff bid. You'd need one of your either BC or Syracuse to kind of bounce back to form. Like, maybe Syracuse is closer to what they were 2 years ago. You're going to need about 3 or 4 different teams to be really good for it to be a shock to the media world, in my opinion. And even then, Trevor, if we're being real about it, they'll still spin it. They'll still spin it. But it would require that. That's why I think the biggest thing is going to be the top, because like if Michigan State and Wisconsin and Boston College and Syracuse are all like 8 to 10 win teams, and Navy's the G5 rep, but BYU goes 9-3 and SMU goes 9-3 and Miami's 10-2, they're going to focus on, well, those top 3 weren't as good as we thought they were going to be. They need to be legit, or at least 2 of them need to be legit, and then you need some of those other things to happen for it to shock the college football world, because what they're going to say is, you play a bunch of bottom feeder Big Ten teams, and that doesn't mean anything to us. And you played a Big 12 team that finished 5th in the league. Well, that's fair, actually, to say that. Again, Notre Dame didn't intend for that. I'd like to remind people again that when Notre Dame signed the deal with Wisconsin, they were coming off playing in the Big Ten championship game. It was I believe it was the year that they lost to Penn State late, or they blew a lead and Penn State came back and won. It was the year James Franklin. I think it was that year. It was after that. So they didn't know Wisconsin was going to suck a decade later. And I believe this game was supposed to have been played in 2020. So this game wasn't supposed to be played in 2026. It was supposed to be in 2020, but the COVID year blew it up, just like next year's game against Arkansas was supposed to be played in 2020. So there's been some things go on that have forced this schedule to come to be, but they intended for this to be a much more competitive matchup. But you can't control what other teams do.
Yeah, if Notre Dame's strength of schedule is going to shock the media world, it would have to be something like Purdue goes 8-4. I don't even know if it would be around Wisconsin and Michigan State. It'd be Syracuse is a top contender in the ACC with Steve Angeli back. It's North Carolina in year 2 of Bill Belichick as a 9-win team. Like, that's what would shock it. I
do think you need one of the Big Ten teams to be really good.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's a good team, but they're in the ACC. They're in the Big 12. You didn't play anybody in the SEC. You played 3 bad teams in the Big 10. So I do think you need one of the Big 10 teams to be really good, or be 8-4 but have a big upset win. Michigan State goes 8-4, but part of that 8-4 is that November 20 upset win over Oregon, something like that. I do think you need one of the Big 10 teams to be it, because you know how it is, Trev. They're gonna. If it's just the ACC, well, yeah, I mean, you played the 2 best teams in the ACC, but the ACC is the 4th best conference of college football.
Sure.
Okay, you beat a Big 12 team, but the Big 12 is over in the college football playoffs. In the 12-team playoff anyway. And I think they've only won, they've won what? 1 playoff game? Correct? The Big 12? 2. No, 1, because Texas didn't win a game in 2023. They got beat in the semis. It was before and then when they won 2 games the next year, they were part of the SEC. So yeah, TCU beat Michigan is the only only playoff one. Because I was thinking like, well, Oklahoma won 1. I'm like, no, they didn't. They made it a bunch of years, but they never won a game. They lost to Clemson in 15. They didn't make it in 16.
Lost to Georgia in 17.
Lost to Georgia in a great game, by the way. Yep. Lost in 18, lost to Alabama, lost to LSU in 19. And I don't think they've made it since until last year. And then they were in the SEC and got beat by Alabama. That's how bad they were last year. They got beat by Alabama.
From DJ, how bad did the Big 12 screw its teams with the conference corporate patch?
I mean, wasn't that deal? Is it a patch or it's just a sponsorship, I believe.
Yeah.
It's going to be like on their media releases. I don't know if it's going to be a patch. It may be a patch, but I think it's more of just a corporate sponsorship of the league. So you'll just see their logo on different things. I believe that deal was for like $20 million, which is the same exact number that Notre Dame got, which is listed between 18 to 20 and barely more than what Ohio State got by themselves. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a great deal. And look, I didn't think it was a great deal when it came out. Wow, $20 million split between 16 teams and the league. I mean, the corporate office is going to keep some of that as well. So I was like, wow, okay, it's not great.
Yeah,
but they did also. Teams are still allowed to go out there and sell their own branding if they want. I just thought a league could get sponsored for more than $20 million. But maybe that's the going rate for a sponsorship, and you're just deciding whether I want to do it with one team or with a league.
Sure.
That's what that's going rate. So look, Iowa State goes out there and signs a deal with some, farm insurance company. And I don't say that jokingly. I'm just saying it's kind of a big deal in Iowa. And so they get, let's say $8 million a year, plus you get the $1.5 million that you're getting from the monster. Well, now all of a sudden you got an extra $9.5 million being thrown into your program. No, it's not what Notre Dame's getting, but for Iowa State, that's good money. So I don't want to completely poo-poo it because it is another $1 million+. going into the program, but the fact that you're still allowed to kind of do your own individual branding, I think is why it's not a terrible deal. But yeah, I would have expected a league to get a little bit more than that.
For sure.
It's better than nothing.
Agreed. From Adam Garcia in 2012, which top 5 teams do you think Notre Dame would have beaten if they played them in the Natty?
Let me go pull up the top 5 because I believe did Oregon and I got to find out if Oregon and Kansas State were still in the top 5. So just give me a second. Let me figure that out. So going into the last game of the regular season. So this is postseason. So Notre Dame was number 1, Alabama was 2, Ohio State was 3, Florida was 4, and Oregon was 5. So I think they would have had a shot to beat that Oregon team. I think they would have had a shot. I definitely think they would have beat that Florida team. Florida was okay in 2012. I don't think they were great. Isn't that the team that got beat by Louisville in the bowl game? Hold on a second. Let me go look here real quick. 2012. Yes, that's the team that lost to Teddy Bridgewater by 10 in a bowl game. I think Notre Dame beats that team. The 2 teams that Notre Dame would have had the toughest time with would have obviously been Alabama and Ohio State. That Ohio State team was really talented. They were really good. They just were banned from playing in the postseason. But Florida and Oregon, I think they could have beat. 2012 Georgia, that'd have been a more they would have had a better shot against Georgia than they would have had against Alabama. Alabama was just the worst possible matchup for Notre Dame.
Yeah,
worst possible matchup. But they would have had some of the same issues against Ohio State, and again maybe against Oregon. I mean, that Oregon team in 2012 was pretty good, if I remember correctly. I think that they or was that
the speed of that Oregon team, that matchup in general would have been like what takes the day? Is it Notre Dame in the trenches or the speed of Oregon? Because that team I think had I know that team had DeAnthony Thomas. I think Kenyon Barner was on that team.
Kenyon Barner. Yep, he was on that team. Cole Ayerla, the tight end, was a really good player on that team. And I think, Marcus Mariota was their quarterback. I think that was his first year as a starter, was that year. But yeah, that was a dynamic team. They weren't great in the trenches. That's why they also gave up a lot of points. Arizona, they beat 59-0. They beat Washington 52-21. Arizona was ranked that year. They beat USC 62-51. They beat Stanford. They beat Oregon State 48-24. They beat number 5 K-State 35-17, and then they lost to Stanford 17-14. So I've always felt about those Oregon teams back then, if they played someone that could punch in the mouth, they struggled, just like the reason they couldn't score on Auburn in 2010. So I think Notre Dame would have been able to punch them in the mouth defensively, just like Stanford did. That's why I think I like that matchup. But Ohio State's a different animal because Ohio State not only had the athletes, but they were also good in the trenches.
Yeah.
So I think those 2 games would have been the 2 worst matchups for Notre Dame. I think they would have smacked Florida. Absolutely smacked Florida that year. So yeah. Good question, Adam.
From DJ, when you get to see a practice, even only 5 periods, can you get eyes on Kedron Young, please and thank you?
Yes, sir. We will. We will.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, of all the mailbags you can remember, what was the greatest estimated percentage of questions answered that were from Salty?
Probably 50 to 60% of his questions. Just because we try to get as many people as possible before we go back, just like we don't always answer all of John A1's questions when he's able to get a lot of great questions in there. And some of them are just not questions that we really care to answer, or sometimes it's somebody else asked us. So I just deleted one of the questions Salty asked because he asked about the stadium naming rights and what would the deal be like. And we had already answered that question. So I'd say probably 50, 60% would be the most. And I have a feeling Salty put him up to that question.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, speaking of the intel piece, if the offensive line does reach its potential this season, how many games could Notre Dame hypothetically win this season running the triple option?
2. Who's going to run it?
Yeah.
In all seriousness, they'd go 6-6, 7-5 just on talent alone, at least. But they'd get smacked by Miami. They get smacked by BYU. They get smacked by SMU for sure because They don't have a quarterback that would be any kind of threat whatsoever running in triple option. I mean, you literally say, oh, we're going to put Blake Hebert at quarterback? And I would argue that Navy's had more accurate quarterbacks than what we saw from Blake in the spring. So it would not be good. Even saying that just makes me want to. Yeah.
From down out, but statistically average. With what you believe about Will Black and his talent and development, how much can he improve realistically from the first game to the last game of the regular season?
Quite a bit. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one is there's just an adjustment to the speed of the game that will allow him to get better. There is experience that is gained from seeing things. So, like, every time something happens, every time he gets a speed rush on the outside, every time somebody does a counter move, the first time somebody does a spin move on him, the first time he has to handle an ET stunt, it's the first time he has to handle a TE stunt. ET is end goes first, tackle loops. TE, tackle goes first, end loops. The first time he has a B-gap crash from a linebacker, every time that happens, it's the first time he's had to deal with it in the game. By the time you get to November, you've seen these things hundreds of times, not just in practice and in games. So you're more prepared for it. Because what's the thing we always say? Like, you don't know what you don't know till you find out you don't know it, right? Until you have to be in the situation, realize, well, I had no idea that I had to do that, or that someone could do that, or what to do in that situation. But then the 10th time you see it, the 12th time you see it, the 15th time you see it, you actually absolutely have a plan of attack, and you're ready to handle it. And those two things alone give you an opportunity to get a much better player. It's just the experiential part. And then your confidence grows throughout the season. Your knowledge of the offense grows throughout the season. There's less thinking involved. It's more reacting as you kind of go through the course of the season. A perfect example is look at Anthony Knapp in 2024. It was rough in September for Anthony Knapp. What's funny is I thought the A&M game was the best game he played in September. I thought he was pretty good against Louisville, but it was really up and down. By November, he was steady. He was still a freshman, but he was steady, and he was solid in the playoffs. Especially the first game, and then Penn State, he was a little rough, but he was also going against two really talented players in that game as well, Denai Dennis Sutton and that guy named Abdul Carter, who was a top 10 draft pick. But certainly can improve a lot. And look, he's still young. And young players tend to make more in-season strength gains than like what Jason Onye will do, or what Francis Brew will do, or what Boubacar Traore will do. So I think that's a piece of it as well. But a lot of it, just when you're talking about a guy who's played so little, there's a lot of improvement you can make once you start seeing, live fire. And there's nothing that can prepare you for that in practice, with all due respect. Now, hey, look, man, I've gone against talented guys in practice. Yeah, that's fine. But have you done it in front of 80,000 people? And that's an adjustment period. Now, once you get that out of the way and you're comfortable in that environment, that's when that starts to do it. I've gone against this. Now, some guys look, man, why? I don't care about 80,000 people. I don't have to block them. I got to block that guy. And that guy's not as good as Boubacar Traore or Bryce Young or, Keon Keeley or Rodney Dunham kind of thing. And it gives you some confidence, but then you're like, well, this guy's got a different set of moves than what I've seen from Bryce Young in our battles. And so I think all those things factor in to still that learning piece. So just the experience aspect for someone who hasn't played a lot is something that can allow significant improvement. Like this, down out. If he grades out at 85% in the first game, but he grades in the first month, but he grades out at 95%, to 97% in the last month, that is significant improvement when evaluating an offensive lineman. Just as far as doing your job, that alone is significant improvement. Taking away any potential, strength improvements he gets, things like that. That's quite a significant improvement. I would encourage you to look at Garrett Lambert last year as well. Look at how he played against Miami, and then his first time ever playing guard, and then compare him to what he was, against USC, for example, or Pitt, for example. And he was a significantly better player at that point in time in the season. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, it just comes down to your comfortability doing these things. It's going to be his first time playing and starting in a college football game on September 6th. It's one of the things I like about them opening the season against Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. Right off the bat, Will Black is going to understand the pageantry of playing at Notre Dame, the eyes that'll be on you. It's, you have a primetime slot on Sunday, a Labor Day weekend. And yeah, it's a game that Notre Dame's favored by 6.5 right now on FanDuel, but it's still, you still have to go out and execute and do the job and all those things. So it's like with anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. I've written articles before about Notre Dame I've written stories about Notre Dame before I got to Irish Breakout. I didn't publish any of them. But it's different when you know that you're putting something out there that other people that you don't know are going to read. I talk about Notre Dame football and talked about Notre Dame football every day before I started doing it at Irish Breakdown. It's different though when you sit me down in front of a screen with a microphone in front of me. It's different. But I would like to think that I'm more comfortable doing it now than I was back in August of 2024. Yeah, so it's just you get better and more comfortable with it with time. And that's how I think it'll be for Will Black.
Got a super chat here from John Stone, 2103. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the super chat, John. We all know the rumors on why Urban Meyer picked Florida over Notre Dame. Which ones do you think are true, and why did he really not choose Notre Dame?
I think what it all boils down to is it was a lot less complicated than some people tried to make it out to be. Notre Dame was not a very good program. They had outdated facilities. They had an administration that wasn't necessarily overly helpful of the football program. You got to remember, he was there at the end of the Lou Holtz era and into the Davie era where the administration was really against the football team. And old field, it was going to be tough to recruit there at the time. And Florida was a place where you say whatever you want about Ron Zook, but he recruited. I mean, he could recruit. It was a program that was still kind of wanting to get back to being an elite program. The school wanted to win. The fan base wanted to win. They were going to support what he was going to do there. They were going to let him get away with whatever that he could get away with, which they did. They had a freaking murderer running around the locker room who no one knew he was a murderer, but they knew he was a pretty bad kid. And that was true. Do you ever watch that documentary on Florida? I forget, who was it? Netflix
Swamp
that did
Kings.
it, or what? Swamp Kings, yes. I mean, they all knew he was a bad kid. They all, and Urban gave into it. He did the same thing with Percy Harvin because he's like, look, I'll deal with that if you're a great player. That's not something you're going to get away with at Notre Dame. So I think in every aspect, he viewed Florida as a place I can go win, and Notre Dame is not. And that's really what it boiled down to. And I don't think he was necessarily all completely wrong. He was wrong, kind of wrong. I think he could have recruited very well to Notre Dame, just like Charlie Weiss did. But there's a way Urban wants to run a program. That's why he's kind of, let's think about it. He didn't leave Ohio State just on his own terms because he felt like it. There's a lot of stuff going on there and some trouble brewing. Same thing at Florida. So he's going to burn that bridge a little bit, and Florida was a perfect place for him to do that. And he did a great job there, just like he did a great job at Ohio State. I mean, Ryan Day's doing a nice job there, but Ryan Day's living off of what Urban Meyer built, just like Lincoln Riley lived off of what Bob Stoops built.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you. How bad does the Big 12 look now after signing that Monster Energy drink sponsorship for $20 million? And Notre Dame got the same with SoFi.
So I answered that on the last question, Trev, and because it's a super chat, I want to still bring it up. But I'd actually like to get your thoughts on that deal. And are they looking back with regret now? Do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how much more Monster was going to be willing to give. There is no world where they were going to be able to give each individual team the disbursement even close to what Chase Bank gave Ohio State or what SoFi gave Notre Dame. But one of the things I will say, you brought it up too, it's individual teams are still able to go out and get their own sponsorship deals. It's not a great look. I didn't like it at the time either. There's things that Ohio State in their release talked a little bit about the benefits of partnering with Chase Bank, not just shout out to you guys for 18 mil. Same thing with Notre Dame and SoFi. They're partnering to set up future athletes, and they're going to have things around campus and for it. And I don't know what the deal is for Monster. Do the players get free Monster? I suppose. I have no idea what
I would think there's like something where the teams get something, but
yeah.
I mean, what football team is going to want their players drinking Monster drinks? I don't think so. Hey,
right.
Just pour this liquid sugar into your system. That's great for the person trying to have peak performance, where we're trying to encourage you to limit sugar and get good rest and all this kind of. I don't really think that's going to, like, ooh, great, we get a year supply of Monster or something we don't want any of our players to drink. That's the part that I kind of find funny and ironic, but yeah.
Yeah, it's when I heard the news at the time, it's like, of all the sports energy drinks that you could have, I hesitate to even call Monster a sports energy drink. I think it's just an energy drink. Yep. But you couldn't have gone out and gotten like Celsius or Alani or ones that are like the fitness energy drinks. I mean, hey, to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah. Got another super chat from my guy, John A1. Speaking of John A1.
Appreciate you, John. What is Cooper Flanagan's ceiling as a pass catcher? What impact would it have on the 26 team if he reaches that ceiling this year?
I think he can be like a Troy Nicholas type of guy. Honestly, to me, I think he brings as much pass catching potential as like a Ben Koyak. At least, I think he could be a guy that can work the seams. He's got some athleticism to him. He's a long strider. And it was against Purdue's first team. The touchdown pass he caught in 2024, Purdue had still other starters on the field in that game. But he was wide open, but the point is he was moving pretty good. The catch he made for his first career touchdown was an impressive catch on the corner route from Steve Angeli. Remember, Steve was rolling left. It was either a deep out or a corner route that he had leveled off based on the coverage, and Steve threw it out there, and it was like a skosh too far, which was a tough throw because he was running to his left. And Cooper made a great catch on it for a touchdown. And, Trev, you point out in the magazine, he's only got 5 career catches, but 3 of them have gone for touchdowns. So I would be fine if that's the rate he has. Okay, so he has 15 catches, but 9 of them go for touchdowns. Victory. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take that. But, I think he could be floor Durham Smythe. Yeah. Floor. Ceiling Troy Nicholas type of production where – Durham had like 15 catches for 241 yards because it was a very receiver-driven, run game-driven offense in the pass game was receiver-driven, and it was a run-dominant team in 2017. You think to Troy Nicholas, I think Troy had 30-some catches for 490 yards. Let me look up Troy's numbers in 2013. But so I think that is, to me, the type of range of production that we could see from Cooper Flanagan this year, certainly. And I think 32 catches, 498 yards, 5 touchdowns. I would say probably not 15.6 yards per carry, maybe 32 for 430, something like that, 5 touchdowns. That's a good range that I could see Cooper Flanagan having this year if he's the clear, no doubt about it, number 1 tight end. Now, there's also a world where he catches 12 passes because they're playing 3 guys a lot, and he's got 12. James Flannan's got 9, and Ian Premer has 18 as more of a pure pass catcher type of thing. I could see that too. I mean, look, if he has 15 and James has 10 and Cooper has 10, Ian has 10, and let's say Ty Washington and Jack Larson combined for 5, well, you're pretty much where you were last year from a tight end production standpoint. So it just depends on whether or not he's the pure number 1. But if he is the number 1, I can see him absolutely being a 30-plus catch, 400-plus yard, 5 touchdown kind of season. Certainly.
Agreed.
It'll just look a little different than what, would you agree? It'll look a little different what Ian did last year. Seam routes, yes, but he won't be running like over the top post corners. He'll be doing more of the bend corners like we saw him against A&M 2024. Yeah. Remember that big catch he had on A&M, that sideline throw from Riley?
Oh, yeah. Yep, I'm with you.
Good stuff. I'm gonna bring this one up because I want to get your thoughts. You're the style guy, Trev. Sine, cosine, tangent. I'm being sarcastic. What do you think of the new green? I say that because you're always like, I don't care. But I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think of the new green jerseys and home game? And what home game do you want to see them worn?
Well, as the style expert for Irish Breakdown,
new title, VP. Assistant to the VP.
I'm the CEO of the fashion department at Irish.
That's right. Comes with no salary increases, which you have to talk about in the podcast. Yes.
Yeah. What do I think of them? I honestly had more questions about the new Leprechaun logo on the shoulder than I did about the SoFi patch. That's just me personally. I know it's a little bit different when you're talking about the school's logo versus like a non-apparel branded logo on a jersey. I thought it looked interesting. Don't love it. Don't hate it. I preferred, especially in those green jerseys, I love the white ND logo on the sleeves. As long as they don't implement the new Leprechaun on the traditional blue and whites, I'm totally fine, because the Kelly green jerseys are the alternates.
It's an
and
alternate,
if we want
right.
to mess with those, like, I'm cool with that, as long as they don't touch the traditional homes or the away jerseys. No. So I like them. Mm-hmm. And then what home game do I want to see them? I mean, I thought it was really cool. Now, saying all this, the game has already been announced. It's for Stanford on October 10th. But with that being said, I would have liked to have seen it for probably SMU. Like, it was really cool seeing them in 2023 in person under the lights against Ohio State. I thought that was sweet. And I think the color combination of like the jerseys were sweet. The outcome of the game was not sweet. But
no, I'm with you. I was just going to say, well, you could do all green in your October matchup or your September home game, but that would be a little awkward.
Yeah.
Against Michigan State.
That'd look real ugly too, because that'd be two different shades of green.
Yeah. And I don't want to see him wearing green. It would be hideous. I don't want to see him wearing green against Miami either. I want him to wear the traditionals. So, yeah.
SMU, I think, would have been pretty dope.
I actually like the green during the day as well. They look sweet under the lights. But I think that I like that during the day better than the green and the white that we saw against Louisville. The reason I think Stanford is a good game to wear it is because I love the contrast of the all green with the gold helmet against the all white of Stanford. I mean, helmet, jersey, pants usually are all white. And if they do decide to wear their maroon pants, which I can't remember the last time I've seen Stanford do that. I'm sure they have, but I don't remember it. They used to do that all the time. You know, that's a pretty great contrast. I mean, I've said this before. When you go with a solid color, you want to make sure that other team doesn't have a lot of that solid color in their uniform. That's why I didn't like the Clemson all whites in 23, because they had very light colored helmets, very light colored jerseys, and then white pants, and a lot of light colors in the stadium. It just was everything was light, but man, it looks sweet against USC when you've got the all white combined against the yellow and maroon of USC. And it was a perfect complement. I thought it looked great. And even though Arkansas had white pants, they had a really darker red, and I thought it looked good in that game as well. It's got to complement properly. And that's why I think, wearing it against a team like Stanford, where they're going to be in their all whites, I think is going to look sweet. I really do. So if I could pick day or night, I always like alternate uniforms at night. I just think it just always look sweet under the lights, but I'm also okay with it during the day. And it's a rivalry game, so you're doing it for that as well.
Sure.
So sure, yeah, I'm good with it being that game. I'm with you, Trev. I would always have the interlocking Indy on there, but you're doing it for an alternate game. The whole point of an alternate jersey is it's not what we normally do.
Yep.
It's a one-time thing type of thing. So fine. You want to put the little fighting leprechaun dude on there, go for it. Whatever. Again, if you are a traditionalist, then the logo versus the leprechaun shouldn't, what is it called? What do they call it? What do they call the interlocking ND? It's Notre Dame graduates. I get mad at me when I it's the monogram or something like that. I think is what they call it. If you're gonna have the monogram versus the leprechaun, if you're a traditionalist, that's the least of your concerns. You're like, why are we wearing green? All green. You're not gonna be happy no matter what. But again, it's a alternate uniform. So if you want to put the patch on there for that, that's fine.
Yep.
No, if it was up to me, I'd have the interlocking ND. But I'm okay with the way that it is, and I'd have been a little bit more annoyed if they'd put it over here on the on the chest or something like that. I would have actually put it on the pant I think that would have been cool. Like you know what I mean? Like down here, like have it on the side of the pan or something like that. You're going to see that more. I would imagine that might pop a little bit more than having it here. But yeah, whatever. I'm cool with it. I like the all green.
From Salty, regarding the Notre Dame versus Miami game, which team's college football playoff aspirations will be most negatively impacted by a close loss and which team by a blowout loss?
Notre Dame in both instances. Listen, Miami could lose to Notre Dame by 100. And as long as they win the ACC, they're in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does not matter the outcome of that game if they win the ACC. Now, if they beat Notre Dame and win the ACC, they're going to get a bye. You know, I mean, that's the reality of it. But Notre Dame beats them by 1 or by 100. It does not knock Miami out of the playoffs in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Now, say, well, what if they've got 2 losses? If they have 2 losses and Notre Dame's their 3rd loss, it's not the Notre Dame game that knocked them out. It was the loss to Clemson and the loss to Florida State that put them in a position where they can't win the ACC. It's not winning the ACC that would knock them out in that instance. Whereas if Notre Dame loses that game, it's going to have a very dramatic impact on their postseason prospects. Number one, you can't lose the second game. We talked about this the other day. Without any context of what else happens in the rest of college football, Notre Dame losing to Miami, unless the schedule is way different than what we think it's going to be, is going to have a very negative impact on Notre Dame making the playoff, just like it did last year. Notre Dame wins. Look, listen, Notre Dame goes on the road and loses to BYU. That sucks. It hurts your playoff chances. But if they handle business against Miami and SMU, at the end of the day, you're 11-1 and you're in the playoffs and you're probably hosting. Just like you did 2 years ago when you lost to freaking Northern Illinois at home, but then you went and handled your business the rest of the year. You're hosting a playoff game. You're not going to buy, but they were the number 5 ranked team. Remember, they only dropped down to 7. They were the 5th ranked team that dropped to 7 seed because of the rule that no longer exists of the top 4 power conference champions get buys. They were the 5th seed. They were the 5th ranked team, and they had a home loss to Northern Illinois. It's the second home loss that did them in. I'm saying if Miami would have beat Notre Dame by 30 and Notre Dame would have beat Texas A&M, Notre Dame's in the playoffs last year. They're not getting a bye. They're probably hosting, though. So that would negatively hurt Notre Dame more than it would Miami. A close loss, I don't know that's not a knock you out type of thing, but if it's your second loss, it might be. But Miami could lose by 100 and still make the playoffs.
Yep.
That's why I keep saying, hey, Texas, stop crying about losing Ohio State. Maybe go beat Florida. Maybe go beat 4-8 Florida. Guess what? Then you're playing for the SEC championship. Don't get beat by Georgia by 25. You win your league, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you do. Win your league. Georgia got beat by Alabama last 2 years in the regular season. Both times, guess what? Didn't knock them out of the playoffs. Why? Because they won the league.
Yeah.
So win the league. Handle your business. And that's the thing for Miami is as long as they win the ACC, they're in. That's why I laugh at people like, oh, Notre Dame's got this path to the playoff that nobody else has. Yeah, every team has a path to the playoff. Every team has an opportunity where if they do this, you're guaranteed a playoff berth. Notre Dame's the only one whose stipulation is you actually have to rank in the top 12. You could be 8-5 and unranked, and if you win the ACC, you're in the playoff. Well, when's that going to happen, Brian? Oh, no, 2025. The ACC champ 2 years ago was ranked 16th in the final poll and got in. So in the last 2 years, the ACC champion has not sniffed the top 12. And in the new rules, they'd get in both times.
Mm-hmm.
Both times. So every team has an opportunity. It's just Notre Dame's is actually tougher because they actually have to rank in the top 12. And the committee can just drop them out if they want to. If they're sniffing around 12, the committee can drop them. Committee can drop Duke 35 spots and rank them 90th. And as long as they win the ACC, they're in. There's no shenanigans you can do with the Power 4 conference champions. They win, they're in. Can't drop them. Now you can, okay, we're going to have them travel. And as far as getting them in the playoff, you can't drop them out. If they win, they're in, no matter where they're ranked. When they're in. Notre Dame is their 10th. You could I don't know, like let's say Notre Dame is ranked as the number 10 team in the country, Trev, and you're going into championship weekend and they don't play, and the team that beat them, who has been ranked behind them the entire time, doesn't play, and there's no change in circumstance. Neither team loses a game, neither team wins a game, neither team has an injury that came out that nobody knows about. And the committee could just say, we're just going to put a team that lost by 21 points this weekend ahead of them. And then we're going to jump this other team that didn't play ahead of them because they won head-to-head, even though we've known that for a month and a half, and we still rank them behind Notre Dame. And just because we feels like it, we're going to make a change. And Notre Dame is out. It's not the case for the Power Four conferences. They win, they're in. Simple as that. Win your league, you're in.
Yeah, it's not like the MOU reads, if Notre Dame is 10-2, they get into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's how people are acting. That's not the case.
Matter where they're ranked, if they win 10 games, they're in. Yeah, exactly right.
It's
nonsense.
It's ridiculous. I'm with you.
Absolute nonsense. All right.
Another one from Salty. In the upcoming IB preseason magazine, will there be sections such as in-season statistics that will be updated throughout the season?
No. The only thing that we might update once it's published is the roster. Now, this will be a digital magazine, so we can kind of re-upload something new. But the only thing we will change is if we get a new roster. And there's new heights and weights and maybe a guy on it, number changes, guy not on it, all those type of things, then we would update that. But the rest of the magazine, it's a preseason preview of the team. So we won't be doing any changes like that. We'll any stats and stuff like that we'll talk about during the season. But I do have a couple ideas. We'll see if they work out along those lines, Salty, but it won't change the magazine.
How soon would you like to see Notre Dame secure the commitment of their 2028 quarterback?
I don't need it to be soon. Get the right guy. I would rather see them take their time and get the right guy than to feel panicked into taking somebody.
Agreed.
So yeah, I definitely don't want to see that.
From Joseph Parr, it seems when I hear about former Notre Dame offensive linemen, it seems like I don't hear the name Sam Young, who made 50 consecutive starts. Where do you put him among former Notre Dame offensive linemen?
He was a good, solid player for 4 years. That's what Sam was. He just never became that stud. I mean, look, he was a 4-year starter at Notre Dame. I believe he was a 6th-round draft pick. Didn't the Bills take him in round 6? I think he was a 6th-round draft pick.
That sounds right.
And, so like, look, Sam had a good career. He was a bust. No, he wasn't. He was a 4-year starter at Notre Dame. Oh, the team sucked his last 3 years. Yeah, that wasn't his fault. I mean, he got drafted in the NFL. Sam had a good career at Notre Dame. But I think Scout or Rivals, one of the two, had him ranked as like the number 2 player in the country. And so that's why there's some people that view him as like a disappointment. If Sam Young came to Notre Dame as a 3-star recruit that nobody really talked a lot about, and he had the exact same career at Notre Dame that he had, people I think would praise him as like, what a great career, what a great story. But because he was highly ranked recruit, he's considered a bust. You don't start for 4 years at Notre Dame and get drafted and be a bust. You're a good football player. There's no question he was a good football player. But it doesn't mean that you're on the same level as Ronnie Stanley, Mike McGlinchey, Zach Martin, Robert Hainsey, Liam Eichenberg, Joe Alt, guys like that. It doesn't, he was a good football player. He was a good football player. And that's what he was. 4-year player, NFL draft pick, just a good football player. Simple as that.
Agree completely. From fatness to fitness challenges, Notre Dame is considered a top team with most of their position groups being top 10 or even top 5. Do you largely agree with those rankings, or do you try to be supremely critical of their roster?
No, I try to be as evaluate Notre Dame the same way that I evaluate everybody else. Look, this is a fair question. I think what you need to be is you need to be critical of yourself. As a Notre Dame fan and evaluator, talking about like me and Trev, we have to be critical of ourselves to make sure that we're applying the same standard to Notre Dame as we do everybody else. And so, like, let's say we're comparing Notre Dame secondary to Miami secondary, and we start like nitpicking this thing about Miami, and then we ignore it that the same thing is true at Notre Dame. like that's a bad way to evaluate it. But the same thing is true as if we're supremely critical of Notre Dame, but not as critical of Miami, in that that's also wrong. You try to apply the same standard to this team that you do to that team, and then sort of let the facts be what they may be. So I think that's, if you're going to get into comparing your team to college football, you have to make sure that you're not, running cover for your program. And then you also have to make sure that you're not being unnecessarily critical of your program in a way that you're not of everybody else. You have to try to be as objective as possible, which is very hard to do. And maybe we get it wrong sometimes, but we go into each of these with the thought of making sure that I'm being critical of my process of evaluation on how I'm comparing Notre Dame to other teams. Meaning, hey, I know more about Notre Dame, which means I may pump Notre Dame up more, tear Notre Dame down more because I know more about it. So then I got to make sure I familiarize myself as much as I can with that team from a personnel standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, from a statistical standpoint, all those type of things, to be able to say, okay, now I at least have some level playing field of information, and this is the criteria we apply. And so you apply it the same way to Notre Dame as you do Miami and vice versa. You know what I mean? So like that way you're trying to be honest and objective with how you're evaluating those two teams. And that's what we try to do when we come into the rankings process, is every team gets the same thing applied. Now there comes a point in time where it's like Notre Dame has the edge in these three areas and Oregon has the edge in these three areas. So you've kind of got to figure out what's the thing that determines the difference. So when you look at like Miami and Notre Dame and Indiana for the number one offensive line, I think Notre Dame has more talent. I think Notre Dame has more power. I think they have more size. They have more athleticism. Well, why'd you rank Indiana number one? They've proven it, and they have the better coach. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? So but now there's other things. Indiana has a more of an experience edge. They have guys that are played in that position. They've proven that they can play great on the highest level, something Notre Dame's offensive line did not do in 2024. So like there's advantages Notre Dame, advantages Miami. So what's the separator? It was Bob Bostad versus Joe Rudolph. That was kind of the difference. So there's always some of those subjective things that can be a difference maker for you, but you have to make sure that you're picking those same subjective things, even if it doesn't bode well for Notre Dame. And that's what I tried to do with that rankings of the top teams in the country. I could have spun that in a way that made the gap between Notre Dame and Miami even greater, because Miami is a D lineman who's ranked number 29 in the country. Technically, he's a 4-star right now. But if we're being honest, if it was a Notre Dame guy ranked 29th, we'd say, well, he's going to be a 5-star once they are done with their clickbait, new 5-star release, because it's their rule. 32 players are going to be 5-stars no matter what. And number 33 is going to be a 4-star, even if he's every bit as good as number 32, because there's an arbitrary cutoff at number 32. Personally, if there's only 15 5-stars, you should only give 15 guys 5-star rankings. If there's 45 stars, you should give 40 guys 5-star rankings. But that's their policy. So you apply that 5-star thing to Jaden Bryant to make sure you're more accurately reflecting what the reality will be of the talent, not the reality of their arbitrary business decision of when they're going to release who the new 5-stars are. And so you bump that kid up, because we would have done that for Notre Dame. That's the context we would have provided if Jaden Bryant was ranked number 15 like Abraham Cisse, and Abraham Cisse was ranked 29th. We'd be like, okay, 29th now, but if he stays there, he'll be a 5-star. So that's trying to be fair, and in that instance, it benefited Miami. So I think that's the thing that we look at. Now, to the other part, do I consider each of Notre Dame's position groups to be top 10 in the country? I do. Do I consider most to be top 5? I do. There are 3 position groups that I think you could have are debatable. It's debatable if the running back room is in the top 10 because of the lack of experience. It's debatable if the receivers are. We both had them 10th. So you can't rank a team 10 and say, no debate to be had, they're top 10. Well, if you have them 10, there's at least a debate with number 11 and 12, don't you think? And sometimes maybe there isn't. But when you rank a team like top 3 or 4 or 5, they're in. It's just about where in do you have them. So I think tight end, running back, and receiver all are debatable if they're in the top 10. simply because there's not the proven production. The reason we have them in the top 10 is because name me a team in college football that has a player like Javian Osborne and a guy like Jonas Walton as their 4 and 5 going into the season. Name me a team where a guy like Cam Williams may not even be in your top 10 of your depth chart. Name me a team where a guy like Jack Larson is your fifth tight end and Preston Frizel is your 6, or a 5-star comes in at tight end and he starts camp off at best number 4 because of what you got coming back. So there's some projection there, but it's at least debatable if they're in the top 10. Either way, if you don't think they're the top 10, I think you're being biased if you won't even allow for the debate. And if you have them in the top 10, you're being biased if you're not willing to have a debate about whether they should or shouldn't be in there in the top 10. Those 3 positions, quarterback, O-line, D-line, linebacker, secondary, all clear top 5 units. Clear top 5 units. Agreed. The other 3, debatable.
Yeah, when we go through and do our rankings, we make sure before we sit down and put them together, I always call Brian and ask, like, hey, what is the frame of reference that we're using for these? We just ranked earlier this week our top 10 wide receiving cores. I put Notre Dame. We both had Notre Dame as our number 10 wide receiving core because we were willing to project what we thought Notre Dame's room is going to do this upcoming season. It would not be fair for us to put Notre Dame at 10 and then not project Texas, or not project that Chris Henry at Ohio State is going to be a key contributor, or project project that Texas A&M and Isaiah Horton are going to take that jump. Or for Brian, projecting that Tennessee's quarterback issues will kind of be negated by the level of talent in the quarterback room or in the wide receiver room. So you have to be able to hold every team to the same standard. It would not be fair if we're like, hey, I know they have a combined 20 career catches between Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Cam Williams, and Micah Gilbert and Elijah Burris, but they're all going to go nuts this year. It's like, okay, well, what do you think about, Raiden Vines Bright at Arizona State? It's like, yeah, he is who he is.
Right.
That just
Reed Harris, same guy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, got to be able to project it forward.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it doesn't mean we always get it right, but that's the thing is you can't make an argument pro Notre Dame and then not give that same benefit of the doubt to the similarly talented player at LSU if you're having that debate. Right. You have to try to be as objective as you can. And I don't even think I'd say we err on the side of being overly critical. No, I don't think that's true either. I think it depends on the position. It depends on the other factors, which are the same exact factors that we apply to everybody else. Whether we're right or wrong, we try hard to be that way. And our criteria was consistent throughout each position group. It's not like, okay, now that Notre Dame doesn't have this, we're not going to worry as much about this at this position so that we can justify putting Notre Dame higher in the ranking. Like, hey, when we're having the receiver debate, we're not going to worry about experience or proven production. We're just going to go off of high school recruiting rankings. Why are you doing that, Brian? Because that bodes real well for Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And it's great because Notre Dame's got 6 guys that were ranked higher than Malachi Toney and Cooper Barkate coming out of high school. So that's our justification for putting Notre Dame number 1. Well, what about this guy and this guy? Yeah, but they don't play a lot. Well, neither does this. Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because this benefits Notre Dame. You can't do things like that because then you lose credibility. I think being wrong is okay as long as people know your process and can trust that you came to that as objectively as you could have and you just got it wrong. But when you're every year, Notre Dame's a borderline top 25 team, but I'm but they're top 5 at every position group. You're somebody's off here. Mm-hmm. And usually it's both. A lot of times it's been both about different things. All right, let's get to this question from DJ.
As of now, do you think there is a 6-man for offensive line like Absher last year, or will each position have a next guy in?
So Matty Augustine, I think, is the best option for sort of a next man in at multiple positions. He's right now, from what I've been told going into fall camp, he's at the very least the next man in at right tackle and right guard. If he has a great fall camp and Matty and Sullivan Absher doesn't have a great fall camp, he could be kind of do what Sam Pendleton did to Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan in 2024, where they were returning starters, but for different reasons, Sam outplayed them. And so he starts over 2 guys that started the year before. Sullivan's going to have to play well to hold on to that job. Now, I think Sullivan's going to win the job, and I think the expectation amongst my sources is that Sullivan's going to win the job, but Sullivan's going to have to win the job. It's not being given to him, and no matter how he plays, you're banking on his past production and past performance to still be okay, the way you would if Anthony Knapp had a bad fall camp. You know what I mean? Like, if Anthony's a little rusty in fall camp, you're like, it's all good. We've seen Anthony Knapp play a lot of football. He'll be fine. He's just shaking off the rust. Sullivan Absher has a bad first 3 weeks of fall camp. You're like, hey, Matty, you want to get some first-team reps today? Or, I mean, just because you haven't earned that. And so he's going to have to win it. But I think the expectation is that he'll win it. But if he doesn't, Matty will have a shot to beat him out. But if Sullivan goes down, if he's not playing well, then you could certainly see an opportunity for Matty Augustine to get on the field. Now, could that change? Could Chris Tarrick have a great fall camp and now he's the next guy in a right guard? Yes, it's possible. You know, so what I don't know, and this is and I truly don't know, DJ. I'm not saying like I'm not sure if he's good enough. I genuinely don't know if Matty's also the next guy in on the left side. Like if Will Black goes down like Anthony Knapp did in the opener last year, do they put Matty over at left tackle, or does Styles Prescott step into that role? I don't know the answer to that. Same thing at left guard. If Knapp goes down, I don't know if they just put Matty on the left side and he's practiced playing left-handed, or if it's Devin Houston or Christopher Tarrick or somebody else. I don't know the answer to that. That I don't know. But on the right side, for sure, I believe he goes into fall camp as the next man into both spots. But just like Sullivan's got to play well to hold on to his starting job, Matty also has to play well to keep himself from being passed up by Owen Strebig, who had a good spring at right tackle, or maybe a great spring or fall camp from Grayson McHugh. Says, hey, look, Grayson's a left tackle right now, but Will Black looks like $1 million, and Gerby looks like $1 million, which means Gerby's draft eligible. So we're going to put Grayson at right tackle and let him play there. If Matty doesn't play well, that could happen. And so there's all types of things that could go into play there. But that's where it is going into fall camp. As far as who the backup is at each position, again, to be determined in fall camp. But as of right now, it's left to right, Styles Prescott, like who the number 2 guy is. Styles Prescott, Devin Houston, Joe Otting, Chris Tarrick, and Matty Augustine would be, if there was a need for a whole second-team line, I'd be willing to bet that in day one of fall camp, that's what that second-team unit will look like. Would be my best guess there. So, good question.
Ripping through a Notre Dame football mailbag here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Some really great questions so far. Sticking with the common theme, you guys have been bringing it so far this offseason, making our jobs a heck of a lot easier.
It's a good way to start off this third segment right here. This is a very good question.
From iCave, did Bryce Young's weight gain slow him down and affect his ability to finish sacks?
I don't think so. I think that's a very fair question to ask. I don't think that's the reason. I think it really comes down to Bryce's hesitancy as a player. You can just see it in him last year. There's a lot of, he thinks way too much. Instead of just, hey, here's my counter move, and it's just instinctive. If this guy goes high, like, here's the thing, you rep it so much that if you're running a speed rush on the outside and a guy oversets, you're either spinning inside of him or you're clubbing him and you're ripping inside, depending on who you are and what your skill set is and what you've been taught to do and things like that. And it just gets to the point where you've repped it so much that you're not thinking about it. It's just that's your repertoire. I know in this game, if this guy oversets and he gets to my outside shoulder, I'm throwing by and ripping inside and I'm going to the quarterback. Or in Boubacar's case, Boubacar would just spin inside and go to the quarterback. It just depends on what your moves are. And Boubacar's skill set is different than Bryce's, and so that the complementary moves that Boubacar may take into a game may not be the same complementary moves that Bryce is going to take into a game. But it really came down to him just not always having a plan, him not always just kind of staying within the system the way that he needed to, and then just thinking too much. And look, Bryce, from what I've been told from my sources inside the program, puts a lot of pressure on himself. And I think some of that pressure he puts on himself prevents him from just let her rip. Just go, baby. You got all the talent in the world. Just let her rip. Just go play ball. You're not Bryant Young's son out here. You don't have to live up to your dad's shadow. You're not a 5-star recruit out here. None of that. You are Bryce Young, number 95, doing your job. That's all. And do your job as best as you can. And that's all you got to worry about. And so I think getting him to that point where he's just out there playing ball. And if he makes a mistake, he's not going to beat himself up. He's not worried about, what's going to happen. He's just go out there and play ball, baby. You're fine. You're going to be good. And I think it's those things that really kept Bryce from just getting a lot of pressures, but always being that 1 second late getting to the quarterback. I also don't know that Bryce had a great repertoire beyond his first move. And I think that's something that they've worked on a lot this offseason to try to teach him, hey, if this guy does this, this is what you do. If this guy does this, this is what you do. And we saw some reps in the spring where, okay, that was nice. I think it was Bryce that had the best rep against Gerby Lambert this spring. Wasn't it Bryce in that one practice we were at that beat Gerby on a nice jab and then just beat him outside? I was like, oh, okay. And that's the only time I remember Gerby getting beat all spring. Now, we were only at half the practices and we were only there for 2 full ones, but that's the only time I remember it. And so I think that's something that played a big role in that. I don't think it's the weight, because I didn't see a lack of explosiveness from him last year. I saw a guy that wasn't trying to explode off the ball last year for a lot of reasons. But when he would turn it loose, you could see it. And if you can do it 3-4 times, your weight's not the problem. Your weight, when your weight becomes a problem, is twofold. One is you lose the explosiveness, or 2, you're carrying too much weight, and so you don't have the same level of conditioning. So you may be explosive for your first 3, 4, 5 snaps, but then you get slower and slower and slower the more reps you get, because you're carrying too much weight. Your body can't handle that much weight. So one of those two things happens. And so when you see Bryce flash from game to game, this game he looked explosive, this game he didn't, that's a mental and or technical thing, not a lack of explosiveness because he's too big. So it's a fair question, and that happens, certainly. I just don't think that was Bryce's issue last year.
No, I would have been concerned about that for Bryce Young if he had a more efficient and productive true freshman season in 2024. Then they add on the weight, and then he slows down and becomes less productive and less efficient. We did see that, however, with RJ Oben. I think Notre Dame put too much weight on him going into 24, and he wasn't as twitchy coming off the edge as he was at Duke. But, yeah, I'm with you.
It's a good example. It's a good recent example, very much. Good job, Trev. Well done. That's why I pay you the big bucks.
From Jacob Watson, what are the players in depth you think are key contributors on defense and offense throughout the year? Name one player you don't see as a breakout that you may see put up big numbers.
Leonard Moore? I mean, everybody else that's going to put up big numbers would be some level of a breakout, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Because if somebody puts up big numbers, then they're now jumping into All-American status, and I believe that Leonard Moore is the only All-American they have coming back. So anybody else would technically be a breakout. But let's look at it this way. What guy that doesn't have a strong reputation that we think is really good, that we may not view it as a breakout because we're not looking at it from a perception standpoint, we're just looking at it from a production standpoint, right? So is that fair? So take away that top level of perception that we discussed. Boubacar probably be that guy, where Boubacar has, just like the system now being what it was for 12 games, and he could put up the same production all year that he put up in stretches last year. That could be one that I could say being that. As far as what players in the depth do you see as key contributors in offense and defense throughout the year? I mean, let's just say hypothetically your starting receiving core is Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, and Micah Gilbert. Mylan Graham will be in there. One of Quincy Porter or Cam Williams will be part of that rotation in the boundary. And I think Elijah Burris is going to have a shot to be a key contributor as well amongst the returners. Tight end, let's say Cooper Flanagan's the starter. I absolutely think we're going to see James Flanagan and Ian Premer at least be key contributors there. Running back room, let's say Aeneas is 1 and Kedron's 2, just for argument's sake, because they're the 2 vets. I think Nolan James and one of the 2 freshmen will also help out at some point in time this year. D-line, pick every second and third team defensive lineman, and they're going to produce this year. They're going to be key contributors, this year. Linebacker, if we assume, let's just say since they're the 2 most highly regarded, that the season starts with Kingston and Drake as your 2 linebackers, then Jaden Osbury, Jalen Steed, Matt Frema will be key contributors. If it's the same starters as last year, and it's Drake and Jaden, then you throw Kingston as a key contributor. Secondary-wise, let's assume our 5 stars are DJ McKinney, Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Breon, Tate Johnson, and Don Schuler. I think Luke Talich, Joey O'Brien, Dallas Golden, Jaden Sanders, and Mark Zachary for sure will all be key contributors this year. Like, as now, guys could pass them up and they could get injured, but like that's where I think I look right now going into fall camp. Could a guy like Aiden Pouncey make a move? Yes, he could. Could a guy like a Brandon Logan or an Ethan Long make a move into the rotation? Yes, they could. But that's where I'm going to start the season.
Yeah, that's fair. Super chat from Drew Rainey. Appreciate you, Drew. I'm so grateful for IB doing shows and message boards that keep these dog days of summer seem a little bit better. In that spirit, please tell me the one player or position group that has you most fired up for the 2026 season.
Offensive line. It really is. Like, now, again, Joe Rudolph has got to go prove that he can coach an elite offensive line. He can recruit one, but can he coach one? That's my only hesitancy. But, man, I'm telling you, Trev, I am really excited about what this offensive line can be this year. And, man, I just am. You and I talk about this a lot. It's not just about who's the five. It's where the five are playing. If you had Anthony Knapp at left tackle and Will Black at left guard and you put Sullivan Absher at right tackle and Kirby Lambert at right guard, I'm not excited about this offensive line. It'll be okay, but I'm not as fired up about it. The right five is not just who the five are, but to have the five in the right spots. And I think moving Anthony Knapp to guard, he's going to be a monster this season. Gerby's a natural tackle. Will Black's a natural tackle. I mean, Sullivan Absher's a more natural right-handed player. I'm excited about this line. And then there's depth. There's depth at the position. And so I think this is going to be their best line since 2020, at least. If it reaches its full potential, we're now comparing this line to 2017. That's how much talent I think that they have. Now, I'm not ready to say they're going to be 2017 yet, because that line with Quentin Nelson and Mike McGlinchey and Alex Bars and Sam Mustapher, and then the two-man combination of Tommy Kramer and Robert Hainsey at right tackle was really good. Really good. And so am I ready to throw it into that conversation? No, I need to see it. But what I mean is it could end up being better than 2020 if it's as good as I think it can be, because I just think there's more talent in this group than there was in 2020 across the board. The reason it might be tougher than 2017 is 2017 not only had really good talent across the board, they also had the best linemen in college football that year. And right now, I don't know that Notre Dame will have that. I don't think it's out of the question that Knapp or Gerby couldn't emerge as that, but I'm not predicting it going into the season. So that's kind of where I'm at, Trev. But I think it has a chance to be as good as 2020. And that was a very good offensive line. Liam Eichenberg was an All-American that year. Aaron Banks was an All-American that year. I think, didn't they have 4 offensive linemen made All-ACC that year, I believe? I'm going to have to go look that up. But I think Robert Hainsey also made All-ACC that year. I'm actually going to go look that up, Trev, because I remember Notre Dame had, in Clemson, had the 2 most All-ACC players that year. But first-team offensive line, you had 3 Notre Dame players in the first-team offensive line. You had Liam Eichenberg, Aaron Banks, and Tommy Kramer. And then Robert Hainsey was second-team All-ACC. And then Jarrett Patterson was third-team All-ACC. So you had 5 starters that were All-ACC that year. So that was a pretty darn good offensive line. I think this group can, at the very least, be on that level this season. And if that happens, everything else behind it, quarterback, running back, receiver, tight end, takes care of itself.
Yeah, to not echo the same sentiment about the offensive line, because I agree, this is definitely a cop-out answer. Mine's quarterback. I mean, I can't remember the last time that I've been able to sit and talk as confidently as I have about CJ Carr this season as a Notre Dame starting quarterback can be the driver of success on a championship contending team. I am so excited to see it, because every year it's if the quarterback play can elevate. And that includes I had those thoughts in 14 whenever Golson came back. I had those thoughts with Malik taking over in 15. I had those thoughts with Ian Book in 19 and 20. I didn't have those thoughts about Ian Book in 18 just because I didn't know if he was going to start because Brandon was coming back. But, I'm honestly excited to see what CJ Carr does this year. I really am. It's going to be fun to watch.
That's very fair. Very fair.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you. Who do you think of Tennessee? What do you think of Tennessee's linebacker Carter getting suspended 2 games by the NCAA, but Ole Miss can sue 2 LSU players? How does this make sense anymore?
That's an absolutely stupid ruling by the NCAA. That is such a tone-deaf, moronic thing. So basically, he got $450 flight during the NFL draft process, and then he decided to stay in college. Like, what are we doing here? Like, now, correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm getting the situation incorrectly, that to suspend a kid for 2 games because of that, why are you setting yourself up for this lawsuit that you will lose? Why? Like, listen, release a statement saying, hey, this is inappropriate. We are sending out this 2-page document, making sure that everybody talk to your players, make sure that they understand that you can't do this, this, and this, and this. We're referring to the Aaron Carter situation. We're not going to suspend them, but in this changing landscape of what you can and can't do financially, this is not okay. Send something out to all the 8. Hey, make sure that you get this out. You, as a college, distribute this to the agents for your football players to make sure they understand that in the future you can't do this. Do something like that. But to suspend a kid knowing he's going to sue and knowing you're very good chance you're going to lose because you're still trying to live in this world of like people say, oh, amateurism's dead. Well, I mean, okay, whatever. I think the NCAA's distorted version of amateurism, which was all self-serving, is dead. I still believe in amateurism, just not the ridiculous way in which they defined it for all those years. So to do this with everything going on is just moronic and tone deaf. And it's like, dude, you're starting to get some people on your side because of how crazy it is. And then you do something stupid like this. And it's like, well, that was dumb. And now you're going to lose people again. So it's absolutely absurd. And look, I don't mind Ole Miss suing those 2 players. If there was a breach of contract, they should be allowed to sue. Listen, you can't sit there and advocate for players got to get paid and players got to do this and players got to do that, but yet they don't have to live up to the terms of a contract? Really? Well, what do you think those players would do if Ole Miss didn't pay them when they were at Ole Miss? They'd sue Ole Miss, right? I mean, so it's a 2-way street. Hey, if you sign a contract that guarantees that you get paid, then when you violate the terms of that contract, then they should be able to get, something from you. So now, again, for all I know, the contract that this could be a bad lawsuit in that there's no terms in the contract. They're just in their feels about it. There's no terms in the contract. There's no breach terms. So like if you breach the terms, there's no financial consequences. You're just mad that they left and you're just trying to, have to have them pay a bunch of lawyer fees or whatever else just because you're being sensitive. That would be dumb. But assuming that there was breach language in the contract, I have no problem with Ole Miss looking to get that money back. What's that going to say to players? Honor your contract. Well, how are the Ole Miss players going to feel about it? Fine, because they didn't leave. You know what I mean? They're part of the program. It's no problem for them. So I have no problem with it, assuming there's actual language in the contract that said, hey, these are the terms. If you breach the contract, meaning you don't live up to the 2-year whatever we give you, then you have to do this and this and this. There's restitution for us if you breach the contract. And then they just don't do it, then you should be able to seek restitution. It's like any other contract. As long as it's a legal binding contract, then you should be able to get the other side to live up to the terms of that signed, agreed upon, terms of the contract. I have no problem with that. And I don't think those 2 things have anything to do with each other, Tyler, with all due respect. They have nothing to do with each other.
Fair enough.
Trev, what are your thoughts on that Tennessee? Did you see that where they suspended Aaron Carter? So he basically got $400-something in like flight for some NFL draft to go see a team or something like that. Somebody in the chat can get the specifics. So they suspended him for 2 games. Yeah, it's just really dumb. Really, really dumb.
Yeah, that right when you assume that the NCAA is trying to do the right thing with some of the rulings that they're trying to get pushed through this offseason, then they go through and do something like that. It's just why it makes it so hard to support the NCAA.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's get to some more questions here, Trev. Here, I want to get your thoughts on this one from Madam Garcia. What are your 2 most painful moments as a Notre Dame fan?
Well, let's see. Maybe it's just recency bias. The playoff snub was just terrible. I mean, that's something that I'm just not going to forget because that was blasphemous. The loss to Ohio State in 23 sucked. I was there in person. Just the fashion of how it went down. Honestly, also recency bias. The Texas A&M game was putrid. I mean, you can't score 40 points at home, 34 points offensively, and lose. That was terrible. Absolutely despicable, especially in the fashion of how it went down.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, the entire 2016 season was terrible. The entire 2007 season was terrible. But the most painful moments is probably the playoff snub and being in person at the Ohio State game after they got that stop on 4th and 2 when they tried to run that jet sweep. I thought Notre Dame was going to win. Like, I was genuinely convinced, like, okay, Audric Esme and this offensive line is starting to lean on him a little bit. I think they could put this game away. And they didn't. Ooh.
Yeah.
Florida State 2014 was also real painful, too.
Yeah. So there's a lot of those. Michigan 2011, Michigan State 2010. I was at both of those games, Trev. I was in Spartan Stadium for the Little Giants play, and I was in Michigan Stadium in the press box for the big pass to Jeremy Gallon that led to Jeremy Gallon's touchdown reception. I was at Doak Campbell Stadium for 2014. So if I'm going to tell you like what mine are, and I'd say I have two answers. One is for games I've been at, and one is for games that I wasn't at. I was at Clemson in 2015. 2-point conversion failed. I mean, I've been a lot of these heartbreaking performances, but I will say this: Michigan State or Texas A&M last year was very painful. Not just losing the game, but the way you lost the game, and then knowing what the outcome was. And if I had to pick between the two, like between that, Florida State and Ohio State, the reason I'd go with Texas A&M is because it's the one that you can look at and point to and say it impacted how the season turned out at the end of the year. The other two did not. Notre Dame is not a playoff team in 2023, even with that win. Now, you could say if they win that game, they've got the confidence to go beat Louisville and Clemson, and that's fair. But I'm simply saying if nothing else changes, that doesn't impact the season. And the same thing is true for Florida State in 2014. I don't think that's why they lost 5 games that year. Because they didn't immediately go down down the tank that year. So, or actually be in the tank, down the tubes. I always love it when I combine metaphors. But those are things that I look at and say, I don't think those things bother me quite as much as that. That bothers me as much as the Florida State or the Florida Boston College in 1993. That one hurts me even more. And so just because of what it meant, you mean that prevented them from winning a second championship under Coach Holtz. It was really rough. It was really rough. So those are things that I look at, Trev, and say, I just because of what it meant to the team at the end of the year, those would be my two most painful. The Bush push would probably be my third. People in the chat talking about that one. That's probably my third because I think that might have impacted their season as well. But I look at that game differently because 1993 Boston College and 2025 Texas A&M were games Notre Dame had no business losing. None. I think Notre Dame played out of their minds against USC in 05. USC was just better. You know what I mean? Like it was a great game. It was a tough loss, but you walk away from that game heartbroken for the kids. And you know what I mean? Because they just gave everything they had to play the best team in the country, a team that had dominated them, and it just wasn't good enough. You know what I mean? It wasn't good enough. For whatever reason, it just wasn't good enough. But you're proud of what they did that day, the fight. You're not proud of how they played against Boston College in 1993, and you're not proud of how they played against Texas A&M last year. And so those are why, because the impact of those losses was brutal, absolutely brutal. So that's why I would put those on top of games that I haven't been at. Of games that I've been at, it's probably Florida State 2014 and A&M last year. Probably my top two. Because they got cheated against Florida State. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
They didn't get cheated against Texas A&M in the same way. I mean, you can say that the no holding call, but my whole thing is it should have never got to that point.
Yeah.
Yep. Florida State, you did everything right until that final play, and then they took it from you. That's different than, yeah, the ref screwed you on that fourth down, but you did this, and this to make it to where it wasn't a 20-point game. It should have been a blowout. Let's be real. That game should not have been close. Should not have been close. And if you don't not tackle Mario Craver at midfield and on a play where you had three guys hit him, it was 14-0. You stop them there, it's ball game. They weren't stopping the Notre Dame offense at that point in time. So that's what makes that one even worse, is they had no business. No business.
It was the mistakes in that game that were so painful. It's
right.
how do three guys miss the same tackle? How does that happen? How do you not catch a perfectly snapped ball on a PAT?
Yep.
How does that happen? How do you not make the defensive adjustment until the final drive to put Leonard Moore on Mario Craver? Thank goodness he kept Ashton Bethel Roman in check. How do you wait that long? That's what made it painful. It's like, yeah, it's still painful, as you guys can tell.
Yeah, there's some demons they got to exercise a little bit. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Trevor, from Benjamin Weiss. He says, when it's all said and done, will Michigan fans view Bryce Underwood as a worthwhile guy? I think that means like the amount of money that they paid him to come.
I think so, but I also think that Michigan over very recent years have a very skewed idea of what it means to be a really good quarterback. I'm not even trying to say that as a shot. It's just, Michigan is not strung together great. I mean, I have a buddy who's a Michigan fan that still speaks highly of Shea Patterson. I mean, and he was fine. He was decent, but he wasn't to the level of what we've seen come through other Big Ten schools. So I think when it's all said and done, I think it'll be worthwhile, especially, I mean, if Bryce Underwood gets him to the playoffs at some point in his career, not necessarily even make a run, just gets him to the playoffs, puts together a good regular season, gets a win against Ohio State, I think they'd view it as a worthwhile thing. But listen, we're talking about a program that has had quarterbacks before that. I mean, they've had John O'Korn start at quarterback. They have Davis Warren start at quarterback. It's not like they've strung together just this lineage of great college quarterbacks. And, Bryce Underwood might be the exception. They'll always go back to his recruiting rankings and his physical talent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually think that they won't. That's one where I take the opposite view. I think if they don't win, I'll say it's like this: if they're 10-2 and winning games, and they're a good football team, and they're not what they should have been with a kid like him, they'll do exactly what you're talking about. But if they're like 8-4 the next couple of years, and he's a big reason for that, then they'll crush him. They'll absolutely crush him. It just depends on how they are on the field, because I think their unrealistic thing goes both ways. They're unrealistically critical of players and coaches when it's like, dude, he did the best he could. The team wasn't very good. You know what I mean? And so it'll be one way or the other. That's where that's kind of my thoughts on it. But yeah, they're not the most reasonable fan base on the planet.
From Ballpeen Shillelagh, will Southern Cal ever hoist the Jude Shillelagh again with Lincoln? Quote, we want to play the game. Riley as head coach.
No. I don't think Marcus Freeman loses to a soft coach.
No.
I also don't think he's going to be there very long. So I don't know that he'll ever coach another game against Notre Dame unless it's in the playoffs. And then if it's in the playoffs, you're not playing for the Jude Shillelagh. So it doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, and that's a big if.
That's exactly.
Like that is a big if. I don't care what FanDuel or what any of the other outlets talk about. I just don't see USC making the playoffs this year. But they will have the opportunity to prove me wrong.
Where are they in that regard? Like,
they are,
because I believe a lot of the betting services are kind of high on this USC team, correct?
Yeah, they are. They have them as like the fourth best odds to win the Big Ten behind the Big Three.
If they're the fourth best team in the Big Ten, has a shot of getting them in the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying it will happen because they've only had 3 each the last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
but it's a shot. They
Yep.
have a shot.
Like USC has higher odds to win the entire thing. They're similar in line to Alabama, higher odds than Tennessee, Florida, BYU, Washington. I mean, and now that's just I can't pull up for whatever reason on their website. I can on my phone, but I can't pull up the odds to just make the playoffs, but I know USC is in contention for it. From Colts fake punt 67, Notre Dame's deal with SoFi proves that the sleeping giant that is the Notre Dame program as a whole is already wide awake. Now it just needs to win a championship. Agree
completely. Yeah, the whole sleeping giant thing, it's awake, right? Like we're post midway. You know what I mean? We're into we're in, what was it? Oh, Battle for the Philippine Sea. It's just, I think they call it the great, called it a turkey shoot. Basically, they were just destroying the Japanese Navy by then. That's where we are right now. But you haven't signed that final peace treaty yet. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that gets you over the top, since we're talking about the sleeping giant thing and that expression that, I believe we've just woken a sleeping giant and filled him with terrible resolve. is the quote that Admiral Yamamoto said. But I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, everybody knows they're woken up yet. The question is how good will it be? Will they just be a top 5 team every year? Are they going to be like Oregon for the last 20 years, where they're always really good but never that good, meaning winning a championship? Or are they a team that can actually win it all?
Yeah.
I mean, look, Oregon played for the title in 2010. They played for the title in 2014. They've been in the college football playoffs twice. The year where Dennis Dixon got hurt, I've said if he doesn't get hurt that year, I think that Oregon plays for the title. What was that, 07? I think 06 or 07.
Yes.
I think Oregon would have had a shot to play for the title then. So they've had great teams, but they just can't do what they need to do to get over the top. Will Notre Dame be that, or will they be a team that actually wins one or two? That's the question. All right, here's one from the history expert, Trev.
If you can, what coach would you recommend USC hire to get the rivalry back to what it used to be?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. You just want a coach who understands. You don't have to be a USC grad to understand the tradition of Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's not a Notre Dame grad. He didn't play Notre Dame. He said no to Notre Dame coming out of high school, But as a head coach, he understands what makes Notre Dame unique and what makes it special, and he plays to the uniqueness of Notre Dame. He's not trying to turn it into Ohio State. He's not trying to turn it into Texas or Indiana or anybody else. He's like, we're going to be Notre Dame. And you need someone that understands what makes USC, the good and the bad. You got to know it, because in order to truly succeed at a place, you have to understand what the weaknesses of a program are too, and in some ways kind of embrace them. And so Pete Carroll kind of was like, look, I could either constantly fight about famous people being around, or I can embrace it. And he embraced it, and I think that had some positives and it had some negatives, but it didn't become a distraction though, in a sense where when you're constantly trying to fight against it, the distraction now is like, we're just always fighting this battle. Whereas instead, we're just going to try to make sure our players understand what you can and can't do in these certain circumstances and situations. So, but man, could you imagine the NIL money that 04 and 05 USC team would have been making out in LA with Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush and all those guys? Goodness gracious. Matt Leinert's NIL deal would be crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, and it's also got to be someone that understands West Coast players and West Coast recruiting and the strengths and limitations of West Coast recruiting. So who that guy is, I don't know. I'd have to really think about that one, the history expert. But I can tell you the type. It's a coach who's going to bring toughness and physicality, because I think that's important, because I'll be honest, I don't know that West Coast football as a whole is about physicality and toughness. It's not I'm not saying they're soft, but I'm just saying it's about, speed and all these other type of things. So you've got to make sure that you're the one making sure you instill that toughness, where if you're recruiting a bunch of kids from Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Northern Jersey, kind of the toughness piece is already there. Now it's about, okay, how do we get more playmakers and more skill, and you got to know the limitations of it. And so I've got to maybe import some toughness, or we got to make sure that when we're building our team and we're thinking of practices. We've got to make sure that we're doing things in a way that separate the men from the boys, so to speak. And so I think all those things factor into it. And that's why I think that's hurt Lincoln Riley is he's not a naturally tough coach, and he's recruiting a bunch of kids who are from a region that doesn't necessarily instill that in how they play. Again, doesn't mean they're soft, like they're a bunch of soft kids. It's just, but if you're playing in a system that's an air raid all the time in high school and you go to a team that wants to play power eye football, there's an identity change that you've got to make a little bit if you're an offensive lineman. You know what I mean? And you go from a high, just like it's the other way around too. If you're a team that in high school that ran the ball 95% of the time and you're going to a team that's a pro style 50-50, it's a style change. You can't be as aggressive as you were playing in that 95% run game, power option offense you're playing in. It's that kind of an adaptation that you're going to need someone that understands. I've got to be the one that makes sure that we're tough and who I recruit, make sure we're bringing some of that culture into our program. And then we have to establish that culture with what we demand of young men, and then how we teach them, how we coach them, what we demand of them on the practice field, off the field, and then how we practice. Because what did Pete do to do that? He created the ultimate daily competition. They were going to compete and battle every day. So if you want to be soft and you want to care about the LA life and all that, that's fine. But guess what? You're not going to play. And there was a lot of 5-star players that never got on the field at USC. Because you just keep recruiting elite talent, but you practice in a way that's going to separate who's about this life and who is not. And they were going to put the guys that were about that life on the field. And so I think it's someone's got to do that. Who that is, I honestly don't know. I'd have to think through that. But someone who fits what I just talked about.
They'd have to go out and hire somebody that doesn't think that they're above the job or above the tradition that comes with USC. And I think that's what Lincoln Riley is. I mean, They got a guy at Oklahoma who had a lot of success there in different ways, making the playoffs. He developed multiple Heisman Trophy winners. And then I think he went to USC, and the Notre Dame rivalry just wasn't a big part of it. I would either look to the NFL or bring somebody up from the G5 level. Honestly, just find a coach that doesn't think that he's above the institution or the traditions that they have.
It's good one.
From Josh Buffo, would the only thing better than the USC rivalry back annually be Brian Kelly being their next head coach and having us destroy him every season?
Oh, that would be – dude, if Brian Kelly got hired at USC, I'd say, y'all remember what I said about not playing USC in September? Scratch that for the foreseeable future as long as Brian Kelly's their head coach. I don't care if you play him in week 0 every week. Destroy that little man every single season, and then we can roll and we can go on about our business, and then I can have that all season. Because then that gives me the whole season and the off season to taunt and make fun of him, as opposed to if it's in November, I only have, November until the next season starts. But that I'd change all that. And in all seriousness, no, I really wouldn't. But yeah, that would be a lot of fun if Brian Kelly's the next head coach. And he's the opposite of everything I just said that they need, which would make that even more fun. Actually, I'll be honest, I don't want USC to suck. The rivalry's not as much fun when you're like, yeah, of course you beat USC. They're terrible. Like, I like beating USC when it's like 1988, number 1 versus number 2. Like, that's when I want to beat USC. It just matters more that game. Oh, great. You beat an 8-5 USC team. Woohoo. Who cares? But I still want to win every time. But I want to beat a team that's actually good. Like this, Trev. I enjoyed this 17 beatdown over USC a whole lot more than I enjoyed the 2023 beatdown over USC. Because I just think that was a way better team. I enjoyed both of them, but I enjoyed one more than I did the other one. I want to beat USC when they're good. It just means a lot more to me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. From Connor Patton, I live in New England. Will I ever be able to see a good Notre Dame Boston College game again? Why can't Boston College get it together?
It's a great question, Connor. Yes, you will. Everything is cyclical, in my opinion. If Indiana can build a national champion, Boston College can build a team that can play good games against Notre Dame. You need the right coach, and you need the right leadership at the school, because the leadership at the school is going to be responsible for going out and getting the money needed to compete, because the reality is that's what you need now. You need to be able to financially compete with people. Now, you don't need to have a $40 million revenue, but you've got to be able to have the right coach and in the right retention and things like that to be able to get those kind of guys.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Sure.
Here's the one I want to ask you, Trev. The history expert also asked, if the backup quarterback is not decided in camp, will Notre Dame use second halves of blowout games to help figure out the depth chart?
I think it'll help. Marcus Freeman alluded to this a little bit in his sit down, and I got to listen to the audio for it. It's going to be an ongoing evaluation. Whoever is named the backup quarterback going into week 1 might not necessarily be the backup quarterback going into week 4. So I think this will be a major evaluating tool because Marcus Freeman is walking into a time in his tenure that's a bunch of new. And we talk a lot about all the positives, rightfully so, because there's a laundry list of them. But this is also the first time he's going to have a backup quarterback that has literally taken not a single snap in college, not a one, between Blake Hebert, Noah Grubbs, and Teddy Girard. And we heard him talk about it last year during the battle for QB1 between Minchie and Carr. There are certain things in the game you can't simulate. You can put them in that situation. You can line up in practice and say, okay, it is 3rd and 6. The game is on the line. You have to convert. But until you're doing it in the real life situation, you're never going to find out what they're truly made of or what their chops are until they're doing it on Saturday or Sunday, given their first game of the season. So, yes, in short, the history expert, I think they're going to help. That will be a part of the evaluation as the season goes on, but they will have to name a number 2 quarterback going into the Wisconsin game. So that's how I would answer that one. It's an ongoing evaluation. That will be a factor, but until they have the opportunity to do so, they will name a QB2 without doing that for game 1.
And no, Andrew, any criticism of Freeman on having 2 composite 3-stars battling for the backup QB, at least until Girard is ready? You are always looking for just something. I don't give a crap what the recruiting rankings are. If you watch Noah Grubbs' film and you watch Teddy Girard's film and you think they're composite 3-stars, and we just have a very different view of recruiting. So no, I don't care, like, at all. So no, don't care. They're not 3-star quarterbacks.
No, honestly, I would flip it. Shout out to Freeman for finding the composite 3-star quarterback and Gino Guidugli for finding the composite 3-star quarterback that was Mr. Football in Florida and won the state championship.
Correct. Yeah.
What
was Riley Leonard's composite ranking coming out of high school?
Oh, gosh.
3-star. It was 3-star.
From Salty, what are your expectations for Luke Talich this season?
To be a really good backup safety and a great special teams player. When I say really good backup safety, what that means is when you're on the field, you're expected to play like a starter. You're expected to impact like a starter. You're expected to be a guy that, hey, if this guy goes down, maybe you're not a future first-round draft pick like Breontae Johnson, but we're expecting you to play like a high-level safety, be a playmaker, make plays, make tackles, be in the right position, go get the football, which is exactly what Luke did last year. I mean, despite playing way fewer snaps than Don Schuler and Breontae Johnson, he had 3 picks and 3 breakups. Now, some of those were done late in games, but like the point is when he was on the field, he was making plays. And I expect that to continue when you're getting first team snaps, because at the end of the day, when you're playing in a game and the game is in doubt, I don't care. There's no second string snaps. It's only first team, because when you're on the field, you're part of the first team. And so my expectation is that you play like a starter. It's not like, well, we're not going to be very good on defense this series because we've got Luke Talich and Madden Faremo and Armo Mukum and Rodney Dunham on the field. No, I'm expecting you guys to be to play like you're a starter and for us to play to the same standard that we have. And that's what you expect from your backups. And I think Luke Talich is certainly capable of that.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to give a player comp for it, different position, mind you, but my expectation for him this year is what my expectation was for like Bo Bauer in 2020 and 2021. Be a phenom on special teams, and the standard of play doesn't dip when you go in at linebacker. That's how I would feel about Luke Talich this year. From K Turn, with the additions of Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter from the portal and returning Faison and Greathouse, what freshmen do you expect to play the most?
At receiver, Bubba Frazier is the only one that right now I really am looking to see how I think as of right now has a chance to be to play for them right now.
Yeah,
like right now, I think he's probably got the best chance to be that guy.
Yep. Bubba Frazier, and then behind him, if they can find some sort of package for like a Braden Robinson or something, I can see him getting into, but he's getting back to health, so I don't want to put that on him.
Yeah.
Like right now,
Yeah, I agree. Let's get to some more here, Mr. Trowbridge. Let's go to question from Jay Melvin.
Brian, do you think this wide receiver core will be Mike Brown's best receiver core since Cincinnati in 2021?
Yeah, I don't think that's really hugely up for debate. Maybe, maybe you could say last year's was better. You had a guy like Malachi, maybe you don't have that, but I just think the depth and the talent is going to be its best. That's not really the standard for me. It's not to be the best since. It's the offensive line. The standard for me for the offensive line isn't be better than the last 2 years. It's to be elite. The standard for the defensive line isn't to be better than it was last year. It's to be elite. The standard for CJ Carr isn't to be better than what you were last year. It's to play in a way that gives this team a chance to win a championship. So I think it'll be his best, but that doesn't mean that it'll be good enough. It's really about just get the most out of this group, whatever that may be. Get the most out of this group by how you coach, how you prepare, the mindset you improve. Like, listen, when you have as many receivers that don't compete for the football as what Notre Dame has, that's a coaching problem. Just like when you have as many going after the ball, but that same group blocks their butts off, that's a coaching thing. So it's about identifying where we're doing a great job of development, but then maybe some areas where something we're doing in practice is putting us in a position where our guys just don't go after the ball the way that they need to and should. And the guys that do, Malachi Fields was that way, Jaden Greathouse was that way, they came here with that ability. They had that ability when they showed up. So are we not repping the technique enough? Are we not having CJ throw enough of those throws? Are we not working on the technique? Like, so every day in practice, and so a lot of times I do this on special teams. So, because we could do some of the other type of drills during special teams, because I didn't have a lot of receivers on special teams. We'd work on different aspects. We'd work on sideline catches. So one thing we'd work on is I'd have guys get on their knee, I'd throw the ball low, and they'd have to catch and roll with the ball to just work on catching. Now, you're not going to catch and roll in a game, but it's about preparing their mindset and understand I got to protect the ball from the ground when I catch the ball. You got to practice that. Every day during pregame, we would work on back shoulder catches. They'd catch it for me. We're working on the technique. I'm working on getting up. We'd work on going up for the football. We'd do different things like that. We'd have bad ball drills every day. We'd do different things like that. We'd work on one-handed catches. Well, why are you working on one-handed catches? Because you may need that sometimes. And the way we would do it is we'd have somebody kind of holding their arm, and then they'd have to go up and use one hand in a contested catch, because that may happen. There may be a game where a DB is doing a great job of keeping you from getting your second hand up, so you've got to go up and try to make that catch. It's not doing it to be flashy. It's like it's a practical drill. How can you expect your players to do something in the game that you don't drill all the time? Not once. We had that. Remember that Tuesday in fall camp when we worked on that? Why aren't you doing that? Well, you mean like a month and a half ago? It's got to be something you do every day. So you look at it as a coach, say, okay, do we need to do this more? We're not carrying this into the games as a group. What do we have to do to make sure our guys understand to do it? Because here's a perfect example. When you're running fast downfield, you've got to understand the human body and how it reacts in certain situations. So you guys have heard me explain this before. There's something that I coach as a receivers coach, and I use the phrase, and other coaches use it differently, but mine was accelerate through the look back. And so I tell my guys that all the time, because receivers have a tendency, when they look back for the ball, they slow down. Why? Because they're no longer looking where they're running. That's human nature. And so you've got to train them to say, hey, look, I got to think about accelerating. Now, in games, do they accelerate through the look back? No, they maintain their speed. But mentally, they're thinking they got to accelerate, and they don't. And so, you got to train them that way. And so one thing that is also kind of a natural instinct is when you're running and you jump, you tend to long jump. It's not natural to run and then go up. Now, not many guys can stop on a dime and go straight up in the air.
Which is physics.
Right. But what you do is you tell them that's what I want you to do. That's what you're working on, because then even though they're drifting, they're going up. But if you don't work on going up as much as you can, then you get what Micah Gilbert did, where he actually jumped, but he went more this way than he did that way. And that's why that what should have been a 48-yard touchdown in the blue gold game turned into a pass breakup because he drifted. You got to train him to think up, up, up. Go get the football, high point the football. And then you got to teach, catch it and get it up. So one drill we would do this once a week, is we'd go into the red zone and we'd work on back shoulders against tight coverage. Because the thing I say is when you catch a ball high, keep it high and we'd put it behind. Because if you catch a ball high and as you're coming down, a cornerback is taught to punch through the ball. Now, did receivers catch the ball in games and go like this? No, but they were trained to catch it and avoid the corner. You got to train that stuff if you want them to do that in the games, because I know for a fact the DB coaches, the good DB coaches are teaching that. If that guy high points you and he's coming down with the ball, you see it, punch it out. That's what you're taught to do. I've got to teach them how to counter that. And that's where you look at it and say, if he can get them to do those type of things, there's a lot of other stuff. They're better route runners than they used to be. They're great blockers. There's a lot of good things about the receiving core, but that part right there, winning contested catches, is the biggest thing that Coach Brown has to make sure that this season he is working on with them every single day on the different type of contested catch situations. Every single day. In fall camp, in the season, all of it. Look, it's great that you do the bag drills to work on those. Those need to be done, but you need to make some time to work on what they're doing with their upper body as well as what they're doing with their lower body. If you ever notice in practice, Notre Dame receivers, I don't remember a time in the last couple of years. Now, again, we're not at all the practices where they do anything other than agility stuff and foot stuff. And then all the throws are kind of like right here. Every now and then they'll do the run at you, go up and catch it drill, but that's about it. I can't tell you the last time I watched Notre Dame do a contested catch drill in practice. That's got to be worked on. Yeah. And so if he can do those things, it's not only are they the best, but they're the best they can be. And that's definitely something that I think we need to see more of from a coach who I think otherwise is doing a pretty good job. That's kind of where I'm at. But you got to work on it.
Agreed. We have a Thursday free-for-all mailbag here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Great question so far today, not to the surprise of either of us, but we're ready to continue rolling through this.
Got another one from Jay Melvin.
Brian, with the new addition of Jackson Vaughn, does IMG have the nastiest edge duo in high school football with Zyron Forstall and Jackson Vaughn?
I don't know of one that's better. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. I don't know of one that's better.
Yeah.
If you don't like his recruiting ranking, I think this could be a good thing for him because he's now going to get seen by all these services. And if he's as good as we think he is, he's going to do very well and he'll go up in the rankings. And if he's not, or maybe he's not as advanced or, whatever, he's younger, then maybe, he'll go up a little bit, but not as much as we think. But I have a feeling that getting Jackson Vaughn around that competition every day is going to help him shine. And people are going to be like, oh, maybe we've misevaluated this young man and we should have him a little bit higher.
Hoping so. From ND Wine and Cheese, if Notre Dame loses a game in the regular season, setting coaching aside, is there a position group do you think is most likely to be the weakest link relative to the opposing group that they play?
Yeah, the two lines.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about it, when was the last time Notre Dame played really well in the trenches and lost?
Like there's Ohio been games
State,
where
2023.
Yeah. I mean, there's been games where it's like one game the D line plays well, but the offensive line doesn't. But to your point, it's like a group where both lines play well. I can't remember.
I think 2023. I thought
State.
The lines played their butts off against Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's the last time I remember Notre Dame losing a game. And they didn't play, but they didn't play great in the trenches. The problem was Ohio State had better players in the trenches. I mean, look, dude, they were wearing Ohio State out in the fourth quarter running the football. Their D-line wasn't allowing Ohio State to do much. They had the one long touchdown run where Cam Hart got held. Other than that, Ohio State couldn't run on Notre Dame. And remember the year before, Ohio State wore Notre Dame out in the second half running the football on them. Defense did what they needed to do until the final drive. D-line did well that whole game. Ohio State couldn't run on them. They were getting after Kyle McCord. Your offensive line did what they needed to do. Your quarterback was missing receivers. You had some bad play calls. I mean, I thought you stopped giving Aldrich Estime the ball. I thought Jeremiah Love had a great game. I thought coaching and skill players were the issues in that game and missed opportunities.
Yep.
So that's the last time. They've lost how many games since then? They lost to Louisville since then. They lost to Clemson since then. They lost to – that was 23, right? They lost to Northern Illinois since then. They've lost to Ohio State again. Lost to Miami, Texas A&M. Not one of those 6 games. And even before then, their lines didn't play better than Stanford in 2016. Their lines didn't play better than USC in 2022. Their lines didn't play better than Marshall in 2022. Ohio State in 2022. Their lines did not play Oklahoma State in 2020, where their lines played really well. I mean, it's been a long time since I think the only other time I remember, I actually thought the lines played really well against Alabama. They played as well as they could in 2020 against Alabama. I thought both lines did well that game. They were outmatched on the perimeter. It's very rare that Notre Dame loses a football game when they play really well in the trenches. So that's what I point to.
Exact same page. I'm with you completely. From Salty, how similar are the Notre Dame and Miami football programs under Marcus Freeman and Mario Cristobal in terms of portal philosophy, high school recruiting, and trajectory of season results?
I think very similar. I do. I look now. Has Miami gone to the portal more under Mario Cristobal than Marcus Freeman has? Yeah, but they've needed to. I mean, they completely rebuilt their defense. At least their back 7 last year in the portal, and not like before 2025. Brand new secondary portal wise. Went out and got a new quarterback. Went out and got a high school or a portal center. That they went out and got a depth player, D tackle, and David Play in the portal. They got a lot of portal guys last year, and they've had how many quarterbacks in a row? 2 quarterbacks in a row. Now this will be the 3rd that were portal guys, correct?
Yeah.
But what are they also doing at quarterback? They're trying to recruit good high school quarterbacks. They got Ezra Abrams in the 27 class. They got CJ Cipher, as I mentioned the other day, in the 29 class. I expect him to reclassify to 2028. So they're basically saying, look, we want to be a high school driven team, but we're also going to make sure we're giving our football team the best chance to win. And if we don't think we're good enough to win a championship at that position, then we're going to go supplement it in the portal. It's exactly what Notre Dame does.
Yep.
Now, how they go about it, the types of kids they bring in are always different because they're different schools and different systems and things like that. And so there's some specifics that are different, but the philosophy, I believe, is the same. Mario Cristobal wants to win in the trenches. Notre Dame wants to win in the trenches. What was the best thing about last year's Miami team? With all due respect to Malachi Toney, it was their line play on both sides of the ball. They had 3 first-round draft picks. What did they play? O-line, D-line, D-line. So in a lot of ways, I think they're building very similar football teams.
Yep.
Run different systems and all that other stuff. But the philosophy in terms of high school recruiting being primary, using the portal for impact. Look, it's not a coincidence that Miami's portal class this year is smaller than the one last year, and it's geared towards a couple positions where they had some big losses. But just like Notre Dame went out and got 3 defensive linemen and 2 receivers. Like Notre Dame had 8 portal guys at 4 positions? Or like 2 receivers, 3 linemen, 2 DBs, and a kicker. It wasn't like they got a quarterback, a running back, this is where their roster needed the attention. And that's what Miami has done. Miami didn't do much in the portal in the secondary this year. Why? Because they got a bunch of guys last year that had multiple years of eligibility, and they're having some guys they've recruited getting in a position where they're now ready to step in, just like Notre Dame did at quarterback. They were going to keep recruiting the portal quarterback until they felt they had a guy that they'd gotten out of high school that was ready, like they did CJ Carr. Maybe next year Notre Dame goes to the portal if the quarterbacks aren't ready yet. Or if there's just a guy in the portal that's just like, listen, with all due respect, if a junior version of Malik Washington or somebody like that was in the portal in 2025, it might have been a little tougher decision than what it was last year. But and again, I don't think Noah and Teddy are as good as CJ Carr, but maybe next year say Malik Washington goes in the portal and you're not sold that Noah and Teddy or Blake are ready the same way CJ was ready, then you may want to go to the portal and then say, okay, we're going to give those guys another year to develop. We're going to get Champ on board. And we just feel like that guy gives us a much better chance to compete for a championship than these guys do. That might be the case. That's not what you want. You want one of the young guys to show himself that he's ready to take over the way CJ did in 2024 and the way, to agree, Kenny did in 2024. So overall, I think their philosophies are very similar. Very similar. And I think Ohio State's another team that I put into that conversation. I think Ohio State is trying to build a lot like Notre Dame is. I think Texas is to a degree, but I think Texas is a little bit lazier with their portal pickups. I think they're looking for quick fixes more so than Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Miami, where they're more looking to supplement their depth chart. So I think those are some teams that I think are similar philosophically recruiting. But then the issue, though, is I don't think that Texas is trying to build their team the same way those other teams are. Because say what you want about Ohio State and all the talent they have, Ohio State is still trying to be a line-driven program. Remember the article I did, or the data I did the other day when we were talking about line-driven program, Notre Dame's number one. Who's tied for number two? Miami. Right. And they've got both sides of the ball. They've landed big-time players. So I think in a lot of ways they're very much building in similar fashion. What they get 2-3 portal pickups on the D line this year, same as Notre Dame. So I think they're building very similar fashion.
Agreed. I don't think it's a coincidence that the teams that you listed off either amongst the favorites on FanDuel to win the title. It's a very common trend. I'm with you.
Yep.
Super chat from Tyler Evans. Appreciate you, man. Do you think it's harder to be a coach on a hot seat or championship expectations?
Hot seat. Look, championship expectations for a program that should have those should not be that hard. If you're any kind of competitor whatsoever, you embrace that, because more often than not, when a school really cares about being a champion, especially in today's modern age, they're giving you the resources to go win. Now, is there pressure on Marcus Freeman and Steve Sarkisian and Dan Lanning and Ryan Day and Mario Cristobal and Kurt Signetti and Kirby Smart to win? Yeah. But isn't that what you want? Don't you want to win? When it comes down to championship expectations, I'm sorry, there should not be a single outsider that has higher expectations for what you're demanding from the team than Marcus Freeman does, or Mario Cristobal does, or Kirby Smart does for their programs, right? And everybody's bought in. Everybody supports it. Now, if you don't win, then there's a lot of issues. But during the climb, total support, everybody's on board. When you're on the hot seat, there's a lot of toxicity going on. There's people backstabbing you. There's people undermining you. There's board members and trustees and donors that are trying to back channel for who the next coach is going to be. And they're not as willing to give you their money because they didn't become rich making a bunch of bad investments. You know what I mean? Like, they're not just going to throw their money away just because they love the team. They're going to do that because they think you're doing something. We saw that at Oklahoma State, where people just stopped. They started withholding money. We're seeing that at Florida State, where some of their big donors are withholding money to a degree because they don't believe in the coach that's there. And we saw this with Gus Malzahn. I mean, Gus fought hard to keep winning, but it's like he can only go so far, because for like 5 years he was on the hot seat, and every time he'd start to win, he'd get out of it. But that toxicity just never went away. It was just everybody's always waiting for him to fail. When that's going on, maybe people aren't giving you money. Maybe players understand like, hey, coach isn't going to be here. So I'm not going to fight for that, and I'm not going to do this, or I may transfer because coach is on the hot seat. I just think being on the hot seat creates such a potentially toxic environment that it's a much tougher situation to be in than championship expectations. If you're any kind of competitor, I want championship expectations. Because here's the thing, if you want me to win a championship, then I can then come to you and say, hey, if you want me to win a championship, I need to make sure that I've got a staff that's doing this. I've got to have this. I need more analysts. I need more this. I need more money. I got to have the money to go get a Mike Denbrock. I've got to have the money to go get, 3-4 new analysts. You got to make sure that we've got the money to keep CJ Carr and to get CJ Carr. I don't think that was a concern. He wasn't going anywhere, but you get the point that I'm making. It's like, hey, you're offering your starting quarterback $500,000 to stay, and this school over here is offering him $2.5 million to leave. Guess what he's going to do? He's going to leave. So I need to make sure that you're at least giving us enough to go compete to keep him here, that kind of thing. And so if this team's spending, $35 million on their roster and you're only giving me 10 to spend on our roster, guess what? We're not going to compete for championships. So if that's what your expectation is, that's what my expectation is. Here's what I'm going to do on my part, but I need you to do on your part to do this, 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 and this. And we're all working towards the same goal. Hey, coach, I want more money. You want more money? Bro, you went 5-7 last year. You know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about? I gave you all the money last year and you didn't win. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go give a couple extra million to the basketball team that made the Final Four last year. That's a better use of my money. So I think that's a much worse situation to be in. Much worse situation to be in.
Agreed completely. Super chat from Jersey Bear. Appreciate you. Do you think DJ McKinney leads the team in PBUs and interceptions simply because teams are not going to throw at Leonard Moore?
No, he won't do that because teams won't vote Leonard Moore. A couple of reasons. Number one is I think teams are still willing to do that. I mean, we saw that last year. Teams still threw at Leonard Moore, and everybody thought he was going to be pretty good last year. And Travis Hunter led Colorado in interceptions and pass breakups in 2024 because he still was an elite player. And an elite player like Leonard Moore doesn't need the same amount of targets as DJ McKinney to have the same number of interception and pass breakups. That's what makes him Leonard Moore. He can do that on fewer targets. Having said that, I'm not saying he won't lead the team. He won't lead the team because teams won't throw at Leonard Moore. It's because he's a really good player also, and he's getting targets. So I think that's a piece of it. But you're still going to see them throw at Leonard Moore partially because he's the boundary receiver. And that's part of the reason I've said to people, you don't want necessarily Leonard Moore to go away from the boundary. Now, there's a time and a place. I think the USC game last year made a lot of sense. But there are some games where it's like, dude, I don't want him to go away from the boundary and go cover the Z on the other side of the field because they can game plan around that guy. And this guy in the boundary can still hurt you. Look, you have to throw to the boundary. You can't not throw to the boundary at all in a game. And that's part of the reason he still gets remember, we had the same conversation in 2013 or 2023. Why did people keep throwing at Benjamin Morrison? Because he's the boundary receiver, the corner. That's what a lot of offenses are geared towards. We're going to target the boundary. So you can't completely avoid it, or at least it's not a good idea. Texas completely took Jeremiah Smith out of the game, but they had to commit so many resources to it that it left Cardinal Tate and Emeka Egbuka open and left, Travion Henderson that had that long screen pass for a touchdown, right? 7-yard screen pass.
Yep.
So it's that kind of thing. When you can put a guy into the boundary and say, go lock that guy down, and we'll worry about all this other stuff. That's a pretty good place to be. And but if he leads the team in targets, it's because he's really good. Now, he was 1 interception behind Travis Hunter and only 2 breakups behind Travis Hunter. So he was close. But teams weren't as afraid to throw at Travis Hunter as I think they will be at Leonard Moore. But it's partially that, but it's even more so about, is he a real good player? Because if I was playing cornerback opposite of Leonard Moore, teams would throw at me every single play, and I'd have no pass breakups and no interceptions. You know what I mean? Because it's like, yeah, I'm opposite Leonard Moore, and they're not going to throw at Leonard Moore, they're going to throw at me. But I would suck, and they would throw at me all day and pass for 795 yards and only stop at 795 because that's when the game ended, and I'd have no breakups and no interceptions. So I'm being attempted being funny there, but the point being, you got to still be a pretty good player to make plays on the football, even if you've got a stud on the other side. And that's ultimately why I think DJ McKinney could lead the team in breakups and interceptions. Certainly could.
Yeah. If I were to guess right now, I would say the leader in interceptions on the team is going to be a safety more times than not. That's just kind of the nature of this defense. Yeah. But yeah, definitely has a chance to, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Christian Gray had fewer interceptions, but more pass breakups than Leonard Moore, I believe, last year, right? And part of that was teams threw at him a lot, but part of it is Christian's got good ball skills. It's just, when he's locked in, he's actually really good at getting to the football. So it's a combination of both.
From Josh Buffo, I don't think he would leave for this job, but do you think Dan Lanning would be a good fit at USC?
Yes, I do. What do you think, Trev?
Yeah, I mean, he's used to recruiting players on the West Coast. I just don't think that he would go to USC because I think where the programs are at currently, I think it's a step back.
Agree. All the things that I talked about that are struggles on the West Coast are also struggles at Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now I think not just the programs, but I believe he's a dad of young kids. And I could be wrong, but I would think I actually looked this up because I think that's one of the things he said of why he likes staying in Oregon is because he does have a young family.
Sure.
But I don't know that. Yeah, 3 children, and since he's only 40, I would think that those kids are sort of in the same region that Marcus Freeman's is, where he's got like one kid. He had one kid in high school, and then his other 5 kids were much younger, and at least 1 or 2 of them are going to be relatively young. I don't know that moving to LA if you like where you're at, I don't know that moving to LA is like the thing that you do with young kids. Sure. And that's true for moving to Dallas. It's not me kind of doing I don't like California. It's a big city thing. I don't know that you'd want to move to Miami. I don't know that you'd want to move to Dallas, 2 red states, if you're thinking that it's because I'm taking a shot at California. I mean, if it's not a political thing, because Oregon's not a whole lot different than California in a lot of ways. It's just more of Eugene is a smaller community. It's a different type of environment than what a big city like LA is, like Dallas would be, like Chicago would be, like Miami would be. It's just a different type of environment that, if you're raising young kids and they're already set at a place you like, why leave there? And that's kind of what I mean by that. But he'd be a good fit there. Certainly. I think he could win there. But like similarly to what he's doing at Oregon, but I think he'd have similar issues there that he also has at Oregon.
Sure.
To be honest with you. And would he have the money? Because, I mean, you still got that Phil Knight money at Oregon. Can USC roll like that? I would think so, but we're seeing USC saving some money this year because they couldn't afford to do it twice in a row, where Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas, they're teams that are pumping out that type of money every year. Ohio State, they're another one. They're pumping that money out every year. Miami, they're pumping that money out every year.
From Anthony Hans, do you think ESPN's take on the SoFi deal is more about jealousy because Notre Dame getting deals keeps them relevant instead of the current SEC?
No, I think it's all about what's going to get people like us to tune in and be mad and watch the show and then watch the YouTube link on it and watch the Twitter feed, which are all monetized channels, by the way. I think it's nothing more than trying to stoke our anger as Notre Dame fans to get us to watch and to engage on their platformed monetized channels. I think that's all there is to it.
Yep. 100%
to it. Because they know Notre Dame fans are going to – Notre Dame fans love being loved and they love being disrespected. They just love non-Notre Dame people talking about Notre Dame. And so anytime – love the guy on the board, but he's mad about something that somebody at ESPN said about Notre Dame. And I'm like, oh, it was actually the same thing. And he's just terribly upset about it. I'm like, I'm not upset about it because A, I didn't watch it, and B, I don't care what ESPN says about Notre Dame in so much as I like to rip them for it, but it doesn't anger me except when it, obviously keeps them out of the playoffs, which I think ESPN had a role in that as well. But at the end of the day, they're making money, and their way of making money is to say controversial things about topics that are going to get people to feel real strongly about something. Say, keep politics out of sports, but it makes money. When you talk about those issues, it gets people fired up on one side or the other, and it makes money. That's why they talk about it. If it didn't make them money, they wouldn't talk about it.
Right.
So it's like with it. Why do they talk about Notre Dame? Why do they talk about Notre Dame? Because they know that the non-Notre Dame fans are going to eat that up, and the Notre Dame fans are going to keep watching because it makes them mad, makes them mad, makes them mad. The one thing that Notre Dame fans are completely unwilling to do, and this is true for a lot of fans, especially Notre Dame fans, is to turn off a platform, a person, or a channel that constantly takes unnecessary shots at Notre Dame. The worst thing you could do to them for them, the best thing you could do for yourself, the worst thing for them is to just stop watching. If every Notre Dame fan stopped watching ESPN, engaging, and doing all those kind of things, there'd be a little less of that. But they know they're going to get Notre Dame fans tuning in nonstop because they're feeding the anger that we have as a fan base, and they do the same thing with a lot of other fans. That's why remember when we talked about why are they hyping up Deion? Because it's a story, it's going to make them money, and if Deion fails, there's going to be a lot more people that care about Deion's failure than they do about Deion's rise, and they want to be there to benefit from the fall. But for the fall to mean something, you first got to build them up. And that's exactly what they did. So they were able to tap into people's anger about hyping them up and then tap into people's joy in watching Colorado suffer when they were not as good. That's what it's all about. Once people realize that you can monetize emotion, that's when sports stopped being sports and it became entertainment. Like true entertainment, like soap opera entertainment. It's always been entertainment. We always have been entertained watching sports. But what I mean entertainment is that's when it turned into a soap opera. And if we stop watching, TV. Yeah, if we stop watching, then they change.
From J. Melvin, Brian, I saw that Keon had gotten down to 270, given that Alabama had him at 280, 285. Has a question about his motor and willingness to work been answered for you?
No, I mean, it's practice. It's still a work in progress. And honestly, I need to see it in games, Jay Melvin. You know, I was talking with a buddy yesterday and we're like, you know, with Keon, like you watch him against Oklahoma and you're like, whoo, that boy, that's that dog. That's that guy we remember. And then you watch him against Indiana, you're like, ooh, what is that? You know, it's like, it really won't matter. I mean, I'll say this. He made strides in the spring. We'll see what he does in the fall. I'm cautiously optimistic. Yeah. Yep. Cautiously optimistic.
I'm hoping to see it.
Yes.
Hoping to see it. Super chat from Jared Z. Bear. Appreciate you. Who has the better year one, Morgan Scalley or Kyle Whittingham?
Kyle Whittingham. Utah lost a lot. Now, Devin Dampier's back. That should help. There's some good players coming back on defense, but they lost 2 first-round draft picks at tackle. They lost, I think, their 2 top pass catchers. One kid went to Michigan. They lost their starting nickel. They lost their stud defensive end. They lost a lot. I don't know that I think they're going to be actually similar, but if they have the same record, Michigan's season will be better. Like if they both go 8-4. Actually, I would argue Michigan at 8-4 would be better than Utah at 9-3 when you look at their schedule.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's very fair. From Insured by Big, resident LSU fan in the chat, there are about 6 to 7 SEC teams this year that will run a fast tempo offense. Is there a team on Notre Dame's schedule that runs fast tempo? In spring, LSU's defense had to work on conditioning because of it. Thanks.
Well, Navy goes with a little bit of tempo at times, but teams in the schedule that do that. I mean, Miami plays with some pace. North Carolina might under Bobby Petrino. Syracuse plays with pace.
Yeah.
Trying to think. BC does not. Stanford, I don't know. I don't know what Tavita Pritchard is going to do. I don't think that he'll do that because he's an NFL Stanford guy background, and neither one of those are necessarily that kind of tempo thing. So I don't think they will, but I don't know. Rice will. Rice has got that sort of shotgun type of pistol type of
SMU will at times.
You know, SMU will. Yeah, they will. But yeah, I don't know that it's 6 or 7, but there's certainly some teams on the schedule that'll do that. Wisconsin won't. I don't believe. Michigan State won't. I don't believe. But yeah, I mean, there'll be some. Not 6 or 7, but there'll be some.
From DJ, which of the top ranked 5 or 7 teams can't survive the injury bug because of depth?
So let's go, Trev, to ESPN's preseason top 25, college football top 25, because I did this for one of the graphics I used in the magazine. I talked about the top 10 teams and how Notre Dame stacks up in this area for top 10 teams. But say Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame, Texas, Indiana, and Miami. Let's say those are the 7 that we're talking about, right? I think Ohio State is a lot like Notre Dame. There's a lot of positions that they can handle losses, and there's a couple they can't. It's different. I think they're better positioned to sustain a quarterback loss than, I think Tavion St. Clair's a year older than Teddy and Noah, so I think he's in a better position, and he's very talented. He's in a better position to be there at quarterback. Running back, they're in a decent place. Receiver, I think, is, not at where they used to be. If they lose Jeremiah Smith, they're not going to be the same team. And not just because he's Jeremiah Smith, because they lost Emeka Egbuka, Jackson Smith and Jigba in 2022, and they still had Emeka Egbuka. They still had Marvin Harrison Jr., and they still had plenty of receiver talent when he went down. I don't know that this team can sustain that the way that teams in the past have. I think their offensive line is a little thin at tackle, but you've got a lot of guys who could potentially step in a guard. Their D-line is a little thinner in the past, but I think they're probably in a good position there. Linebacker might be a little bit of a problem, and I think their secondary is really deep. And like Notre Dame, can't afford to lose a quarterback. I think that's a position where you don't want to go down. Losing one of your starting defensive ends would be more problematic this year than maybe it has been in the past. So I think they're both in a situation where, there's some question marks about where they will be. I look at number 2, Oregon. I think offensive line is a position where they're in big trouble if they lose a guy. I think receiver's a position where they might be a little bit of trouble if they lose a guy. Quarterback, they should be good. Running back, they should be good. D-line, they should be good. Linebacker, they should be good. Secondary, they should be good. Receiver, tight end, a little bit, more problematic at that position. Georgia's one that I think could struggle if there's a lot of injuries, depending on what position we're talking about. I think their starting lineup in the secondary could be really good. I think there's a bit of a drop-off when you look at what comes next. Their defensive line, I don't think, can sustain the kind of injuries that Notre Dame did in 2024 and still survive. I think Georgia's a team that would struggle a little bit. I think Texas can handle injuries at most positions. Quarterbacks, they're like a little bit like Notre Dame. I think Miami can handle losses at a lot of positions. They're a lot like Notre Dame. You don't want to lose your quarterback. I think there's a big drop-off there. Receiver, they're loaded. Running back, they can handle an injury. D-line, I think they're in a little bit of a different spot this year than last year. They've got depth, but they're kind of like Notre Dame, where if you lose a starter, you're going to put a pretty good guy in the starting lineup, but now your depth isn't as good because that guy that's stepping into the lineup isn't as good. And I think that's kind of where they are there. That's where I feel about Notre Dame at the end. Notre Dame and Miami are very similar situations in the D-line at edge. I think Miami also has that issue on the inside where Notre Dame just kind of has it on the edge more so. So I think those are those teams. And then I think Indiana is a team that is not built to sustain injuries this year the way they've been in the past. Especially like if they lose one of Marsh or Charlie Becker, they don't have that third dude and fourth dude the same way they did last year. I mean, EJ Williams is a good football player, man. Like, obviously you had Charlie Becker, Elijah Surratt, and Omar Cooper Jr. So I think their secondary is a little bit thinner this year. And the big one for them is their D-line, especially D-tackle. They're not in nearly as good of a position if they lose a starter this year as they were a year ago. So I would say probably Georgia and Indiana are of the top 7 teams are probably the ones that can least afford to have a rash. Because when you think injury bug, it's not like losing a guy. It's losing multiples of different positions like Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame in 2024 lost your starting cornerback to a season-ending injury, lost 4 defensive linemen that either started or were in the rotation to season-injuring issues. 3 were injury. 1 was personal related. You lost, 2 linemen to season-ending injuries, 1 in the first week of fall camp, 1 in week 3 at another starting offensive lineman missed 4 games. Another offensive lineman missed the title game. Jordan Faison got banged up at receiver. Like, you just had a lot of injury issues at different spots that year. And that proved problematic where it's not just a guy, but it's multiples. And that's how I take injury bug. So those would be the 2, Trev. So of Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, Miami, Indiana, and Georgia. Would you advocate for anybody else other than Georgia or Indiana being in the worst shape should the injury bug happen?
No, like you said, we can nitpick like certain position groups with every team in the top 7, but injury bug as far as plaguing a good chunk of the roster, I'm with you. Indiana for sure, Georgia for sure. Indiana, especially in certain spots, will be in a lot of trouble if they lose their guy. From Anthony Hans with the SoFi deal, do you see a potential game at SoFi Stadium in the future, and what team would you like to play?
I mean, I could see that. Isn't SoFi, is that out in California?
Yep, that's where the Rams and the Chargers play.
Oh, it's in LA? Okay, I couldn't remember if it was that one or what's the one that San Francisco plays in? They're named after something like that too, right?
Let
me look that up real quick. But yeah, I mean, you Levi Stadium, okay. But yeah, so sure. Who I'd like to play, I don't know. If you ever scheduled a neutral site game with Oregon, maybe that might be a game. Go out there out west and kind of smack them around. Ideally, in a perfect world, smack around in front of all those West Coast recruits. BYU, if they wanted to get out to the West Coast because they recruit California decently, or they definitely try to. There's a very heavy Polynesian presence, obviously in California, Southern California. We've seen that with Notre Dame, obviously, with some of the guys they've recruited in recent years. So, I think it would behoove BYU to get a game like that. If you wanted to, after you're home and home, hey, let's play in 2028. Let's go out there to SoFi or something like that. I'm sure. I mean, a team like that, but maybe get a team from Texas that's trying to recruit in the West Coast. I think there'd be a lot of merit to playing either an old school Pac-12 team or a Big 12 team out in LA would be. And when I say old school Pac-12 team, it could be Washington or Oregon that they're now in. Let's say you wanted to play UCLA but not at the Rose Bowl, which I don't know why you would do that, but a lot more seats, I guess. I don't know, more money, better, more modern. And isn't USC going away from the Rose Bowl? Aren't they going to SoFi? I know they're leaving the Rose Bowl, but I don't know if they're. I thought I read some of they're going to the NFL stadium, which I don't remember. I didn't know that it was SoFi at the time, but I thought I might be wrong on that. But I know they're looking to leave the Rose Bowl. Something like that, I'd be fine with.
Yeah,
but I don't really care to play out. It's not like, now we're sponsored by SoFi. We've got to go play in SoFi Stadium. I don't care about that. But if it's something that SoFi wanted and they were willing to give Notre Dame some even more money to go play a game out there, cool.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
Somebody said jokingly, okay, ACC powerhouse Cal. Now, I get the joke you're making, but I'd rather play Cal in SoFi than play them at Berkeley in their little dinky stadium that's built on top of a fault line. So, you know what I mean? It's literally built on top of a fault line. So, but sure. Yeah.
I'm with you.
That's where I'm at. So, let's see here. Let's go to Salty's got a good one here. Not that I'm surprised that Salty's got a good one. I'm just saying this one in particular is a good one.
Does it seem to you that coaches have been mouthing off more in this preseason than in seasons past? And if so, why is this happening? It's $1 million question.
Social media relevance. Again, you're playing on people's emotions, right? That's what modern – and that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do that. Our passion, we know that our passion taps into your passion. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. You fight hard for your team and your fan base is going to love you. Michigan fans by and large still really don't think their team cheated. I literally know people that I know to be intelligent human beings, and it's not many because we're talking about Michigan football fans, but there are some that I know to be intelligent human beings who will still advocate that Michigan didn't cheat, or they did this, it was wrong, but it shouldn't be cheating, or it's not that, it's no different than this or this. And I'm like, oh my God, if Ohio State did that, you'd be losing your mind right now. That's the real, and let's be honest, if Ohio State did the same thing, their fans would be defending them and Michigan fans would be acting like they just committed, treason against the United States of America, which is punishable by death. Let's be real about that. Most fan bases are that way. Not everyone in that fan base, But most fan bases are that way, and so they're playing to their crowd. Texas Tech, when they were defending Brendan Sorsby, was not trying to win over fans of other teams. They were trying to convince their support system to stay with them. That's all it was. They didn't care what anybody else thought. As long as their people were happy, they didn't care what Texas fans thought or Notre Dame fans thought or anybody else thought. That's how could they say these stupid things? Because you got to know who the audience is. The audience isn't us. They're not trying to win us over. They're trying to make sure that their fan base is still happy and giving money. And so that's a big part of it. And honestly, I think a lot of this is pressure. I think there's a lot of coaches that are buckling under the pressure of the moment. And they understand that, like, they're expecting me to get in the playoffs and it's not fair because it's this, it's because it's that. And I think a lot of coaches are realize, like, if I want to keep my job, I got to make it to the playoff. And for me to make it to the playoff, I need to fight to get as easy of a pathway as possible to get there. And it's just a soft mindset and a lack of competitiveness and a lack of leadership, in my opinion. And it's sad and disappointing, but I think that's part of it as well. I think a lot of it's just kind of pressure. And a lot of these coaches, look, here's something we all know this to be true. Famous people, whether we're talking about in sports and entertainment, in politics, whatever, tend to surround themselves with people who are going to tell them that they're always right. You know, like there's a bubble. They live in a bit of a bubble where they're always told they're right. They're always told this. They're always told that. Hey, we all think like you, so you think everybody else thinks like that. When in reality, it's your circle, or you happen to live in this state. But if you were to take that attitude to another state, either direction, it's not going to be as accepted. And so I think they say these things and their echo chamber, yes, rah, 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 go coach. And then you say this, and now it's being absorbed by the rest of the world that's not supportive of your program and not a yes man for you. And you're shocked that there's pushback for what we're saying. Like, dude, I was at a booster thing the other day and I said this and they were all on board. They gave us more money because of it. I don't know why I'm getting hammered on social media, because you are surrounded by people that are just going to tell you what you want to hear. And I think that's part of it as well. Is I think they also know that it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, as long as my echo chamber's happy and thinks I'm fighting a good fight, then they're going to support us, which is kind of what drives me nuts about Notre Dame. It's like, I wish you guys would take a little bit more of this mentality, because you guys just keep peeing on your support, your echo chamber, your support group. You keep peeing on us to go, reach out to the people that aren't your backers, the people that are going to have your back, the people that go on podcasts every day for 2 months and fight for your playoff rights and go after USC when they come at you. Like, you continue to just kind of pee on us a little bit. It is what it is. But most people are not like that. But within the circle, you think everyone around Marcus Freeman's telling them all the time, hey, coach, that's probably not a good idea. Hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, you should do no, coach, that's smart. Yes, let's do this. Let's do this. That's everybody. Like, I don't want 5 employees that always tell me everything I do is wrong. I mean, you want both. You want honest opinion. You want positive, you want feedback. But most people tend to surround themselves with yes men, or they want people to give them good feedback, but those people aren't willing to do it. Like, I would imagine, Trev, when you and I have had conversation, like, how hard does he want me to go on this question when you first worked for me? I'm saying, after a while you realize, like, I want constructive criticism, but like, when I first start, I'm like, is this a trick? Is this a setup? You know what I mean? Like, how hard am I supposed to go with this guy?
Yeah. No, I get it. When I was first hired, that was definitely something that we had to work on. But I have my own conspiracy theory also as to why this has been going on this offseason. I think that this is a ploy by some of the coaches to try to reach the younger generation of recruits that are coming up. In this day and age of social media, it's who has the biggest own, who has that one-liner, right. Who's which coach is going to be like, hey, that coach has my back, man. Like, see what he's popping off saying on social. I honestly, genuinely, I believe that that's a thing. I think that that's part of the reason why they're doing it. It's like, oh, he's about it. Like, he's about that talk. He's about that life. And I think that's why I do some of it. I genuinely believe that's a piece of it too. So I was sitting here thinking, I was like, how can some of these more reputable coaches that have been in the game for a while say some sideways stuff like that? If it was like a new up and coming, like, look, if Kenny Dillingham said some sideways stuff, it'd be like, he's like 37. Like he'll learn with the craft of the job. It's
Sure.
guys that have been Lane Kiffin was coaching in the SEC in 2009.
Right.
I
Isn't he like
genuinely
almost
think,
50 or like 50? Like how old is Lane? He's 51.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Steve
think it
Sarkisian is not a spring chicken. Trev.
No.
He's 52.
Yeah. I think it is their attempt at trying to reach the younger generation. I really do. I think that a part of it.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And social media clout means a lot to people nowadays, even older people. You and I have talked about this. People know I'm a right-leaning person from a political standpoint, but nothing makes me want to punch someone more than say, yeah, but he owned the libs. But he made a terrible argument. He wasn't using data. He was being a child. Like, I don't care that he quote unquote owned the libs. They've done nothing. They're not. It's like, who cares? He owned the libs. And what is this, a social media battle? Like, we've got 75 social media points and that side's got 64 more social media points. So we're winning. It's silly. It accomplishes nothing, but it's a moral victory. Like you said, it's like, I got more followers. I got more people doing this. I got more people doing that. That's why grifting is such a popular thing now in cultural, discussions and political discussions, because it's like people don't want to hear sound arguments about why taxes should be lowered or why taxes should be raised. We're no longer having Thomas Sowell and Milton Friedman on a Phil Donahue show against two people on the left debating school choice and tax policy and things like that. Nobody wants to hear that anymore. People want to hear me flame you and troll you and things like that. I mean, that's what presidential debates have turned into. Ooh, did you see how he owns that guy? I don't care. He made it. There was no substance to this conversation, but boy, he owned him. Our side won that one. How? What policy agenda was put forth in this discussion that was somehow going to be good for us? Well, it's not going to be terrible for us, but we dominated. It's just retarded. It's just, I hate it. And it's bled into sports. Like you're playing to your audience. And that's a great point, Trev. Like, it's also getting to that young crowd. That's how you get to the young crowd. It's a great point. Sadly, it's a great point. I won the social media battle.
Mm-hmm.
The level of stupid that we have seen in our country the last few years, because people follow the little different personalities, and then those people get dumber and dumber and dumber and crazier with the things that they say, because it's going to keep those people every single day coming back for more. And it's wild stuff. People, they'll take a completely 180-degree different stance on something than what they did a year ago, because now that's the cool thing to do. It's kind of gross. And that's a phenomenal point, Trev, because you're spot on. That's exactly what we're seeing right now in sports as well. I mean, he may have said something really stupid, but you know what? To that fan base, like, we think what Steve Sarkisian said was total childishness and silliness. But you know what? The Texas fans are like, yeah, you tell them go screw Notre Dame, go join conference. Like, well, that's original. You know what I mean?
That's what it was too. It's like, I've been saying it for years. It's
right.
Like, well, yeah. Like, that's what it's come down to, man.
Right. Join a conference. Okay. That's the stupidest thing ever. You do realize if we join a conference, we still may not play you, like, ever. You know what I mean? Like, there's 30 teams in the conference now. So we'll play you, every 5 years, just like we would have as a non-conference? Yeah, but you've joined a conference and you followed along like all the other sheep. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so ridiculous. By the way, speaking of sheep, did you see did I ask you this before? Did you see the Prime Video, the Sheep Detectives on Amazon?
I heard
Prime?
That was actually a pretty good movie.
Was really fun. Ange and I watched it. I was like, this is going to be stupid. And we watched it, and it was hilarious. I enjoyed it very much. It was really well done. So watch it with your wife.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to win an Oscar? No. Is it going to be entertaining for a couple hours? Absolutely.
I'm down for that.
Yes. I enjoyed that very, very much. We'll add it
to the watch list for when the maternity paternity leaves kick in.
That's messed up, Irish. That's messed up, big. That's messed up, dude. That's so wrong.
From Matthew Wyrick, we have not had many explosive plays at wide receiver over recent years. Curious to know how many throws CJ Carr completed passes for over 40 yards or more last season. Do you think they exceed that number this year?
You got to think too that part of the reason that Notre Dame didn't actually have a lot is because they didn't throw the ball a lot. But here's the deal. So if you look at pass plays of 40 yards or more, Notre Dame ranked 25th in all of college football last year with 12. They were only 3 behind. They get 3 more. They're in the top 10. And everybody in the top 10 played at least 13 games except for Florida State and San Jose State. So I don't know that I necessarily agree with that that notion, especially when you consider that, here's a great way of saying it, Trev. So Notre Dame ranked 25th in college football in pass plays of 40 yards or more, but Notre Dame ranked 116th in college football in pass attempts. And they ranked 99th in the country in pass completions. So their big play percentage was pretty good. Let's do this. I don't know if I'm going to get the answer that I want. I'm literally doing this in real time, but the Power 5 team that was ranked number 1 was Mississippi State with 20. Actually, let's do this. Let's go a playoff team. Let's go Ole Miss. Ole Miss was the highest ranked playoff team in 40-yard pass plays or more. They had 18. So forget number of games. So it's 18 divided by 445 attempts. So 4% of their passes were went from 44% of their attempts went for 40 yards or more. Notre Dame last year, Trev, attempted, let's go to the Notre Dame page. They attempted 323 passes. So you have 12 divided by 323. So Notre Dame, 3.74. So it's about the same. Looks like it's about the same. But the point is, if they passed as much as Ole Miss, they'd be very close to Ole Miss. They'd be like 1 behind Ole Miss in those attempts. So that's going to factor into it quite a bit. So that's what I would say. They actually had a pretty good rate last year. Very similar at 0.03 behind the team that was number 3 in the country and the highest Power 4, or highest playoff team. So
that ain't too bad.
Yeah.
I was about to say that would,
go ahead.
That would have been my pushback, is like, not many explosive wide receiver plays is what I would push back on. Now we can talk about how we need to see more on the biggest moments, but just their season in general, I would push back on that.
I mean, they had at least one 40+ yard play against Miami and A&M, both to Eli Raritan.
Yep.
So, that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. All right, let's get a few more here, Trev. We get close to wrapping this thing up. With the Narduzzi comment about losing 100% to Notre Dame doesn't matter. Yes. But it's true, though. Like, it was a dumb thing to say, and he didn't say 100-0. He said, he literally gave the score of the last 2 games. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter in regard to, does it keep them from the playoff or not? Well, it might, but it doesn't have to. You could lose by 100, and as long as you win your league, you're still in the playoffs. So that's even less of, why are you ducking this non-conference game? Because you could lose. Look, Texas could lose by 100 to Ohio State this year, but if they go 8-1 in their league, they're probably playing for the conference championship. If they win all their league games, they could go 0-3 in the non. They could play Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Oregon in the non-conference, lose all 3 of those games by 10. As long as you handle your business in your league, you're in the playoff. And nobody cares. Oh, we're a different team now. And they would be. You know why? Because they would have really challenged themselves in September and found out who they were, what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were. They can adjust those. They can learn from those things and become a better football team. And be a team that, I don't want that rematch. Is that not exactly what we said about Notre Dame last year? Hey, they learned from those 2 losses, and that made them a much more dangerous team.
Yep. Yep.
So
on the inverse, that's what we talked about as one of the potential concerns for Notre Dame this season. It's like, which is going to be the opponent that exposes the warts? Do you really want to find out what those warts are on the road in Provo? Do you want to find out what those warts are on November 7th? Ideally not. So I'm with you completely.
It's a very interesting question here from Insured by Dick.
What insecurity was the hardest for you to get over doing YouTube and podcasting? The sound of your voice or your physical appearance? By the way, and he followed that up with, I remember he put this in the chat. By the way, you are all beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Physical appearance, just having to deal with just the expected nastiness that was going to come from people talking about my weight. I knew that was going to happen. It doesn't mean that I like it. Doesn't mean that it's easy. Doesn't mean that it's like no problem. I mean, it doesn't bother me too much, but it's not fun. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was one of my biggest concerns about being on camera every day. It's knowing there were going to be losers on social media and on other message boards that were going to make fun of my weight, but I didn't care. I can lose weight. You're still an idiot, you know? So, I mean, that's the comeback, but I'm not going to sit there and say it doesn't bother me at all. I've just had to kind of remove myself from situations where I might see something like that and just not worry about it in that regard. But yeah, that was one of my big concerns.
Yeah, mine was also physical appearance, but it's my race. Like you turn on ESPN, CBS Sports, any podcast, you don't see a lot of South Korean men talking about college football.
Right.
And so my biggest insecurity was I was going to immediately get discredited because they would just assume that this is a topic that I didn't know a whole lot about because of this.
Our regular listeners weren't that way, but there were some comments like that on the chat or on the YouTube channel when you first got hired. Yeah. I got rid of them right away because I don't need stupid people like that. I'd rather you not follow our channel. The problem is the vast majority of people aren't that way. The vast majority of people don't care about my weight. The vast majority of people don't care about what I look like. The vast majority of people don't care about your race. The vast majority of people care about what are you saying?
Yeah.
The problem is we're now in a victim society where there's people trying to tell me that I should be more offended for people making fun of my weight. You know what I mean? And instead of saying, hey, Brian, how about you get healthier? It's like, no, big is beautiful. It may be beautiful, but it's not healthy. You know what I mean? Or, you know, it's like, no, Trev, you should be offended. You should focus on those 5 people out of 20,000 that subscribe to our channel and be a victim. Like, you know what? Let's just move past it. But it also doesn't mean that those comments still don't sting. Especially like for you, when people are criticizing you for something first of all, it's not something you should apologize for, but it's not something you have control over.
Right.
I have control over what I look like from a size standpoint. You have no, you can't go like, I mean, it's like,
it looks messed up,
but it's like, but do you focus on that stuff? Look, there's ignorant people out there. So what? So what? The best thing you can do to people that criticize you is to just remind them that you don't care. Nothing bothers a person like that more than like, wow, I'm saying all these ignorant things and it's just not bothering that person at all.
Yeah.
Like when you let them know it bothers you, they win. Yeah, but that person's a moron. Yeah, but they don't care that they're a moron. They know that. They're leaning into it, Yeah. When you realize you stop letting them, you don't care, then you take away their power.
That's where I center my focus at is you can make a comment like that. That doesn't necessarily bother me. To your point, doesn't make it not sting. But I know if we sat down and we talked ball, I know I'm more knowledgeable about Notre Dame and about football than what you are.
I just saw Big's follow-up comment, and it's so bad, dude. I'm not bringing that up on the channel.
No, dude, that got me. I was listening so intently to what you were saying, and I saw it come in. I was like,
yeah. I like Irish Lions comment. There's a big difference between fat and well fed. Always remember that. Well played, my friend. Well played. I'm not fat. I'm big boned. I like this one. I'm not fat. I'm well fed. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you, man. We got to end the show on a football thing, though. Let's get a couple football comments before we get out of here. Irish Lions, you did have a great question, but let's get to that one since he had that funny one. Let's get to this one.
Nick Saban stays in the NFL and doesn't go to Bama. How do you think the landscape of college football is? Without the SEC dominance for years, does the Pac-12 survive? Does the Big 12 stay intact?
So I think the SEC still would have dominated.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it would have been more different teams. So Bama doesn't win the title in 2012 or 11. It would have been LSU, maybe. So Bama doesn't win the title in 2017. It would have been Georgia. Bama doesn't win the title or Georgia doesn't win the title in 2021. It would have been Bama, vice versa kind of thing, So I just think you would have seen different teams be there. I think that's what it would have. I mean, like we talked about. Somebody asked about 2012. So if Nick Saban isn't there, well, maybe Georgia beats Notre Dame, because if Georgia would have beat Alabama, they'd have played Notre Dame for the title. Well, it's not a given that Notre Dame would have somehow beat them. Maybe they still would have done it. Now there are also years where things change a little bit, right? You look at 2010. Auburn was number 1. The next highest ranked SEC team was Arkansas, all the way down at 8. Well, maybe that year it would have been Oregon versus TCU, and the Big 12 wouldn't, or the SEC wouldn't have won a title that year. So I mean, there would have been years where maybe that was true, but I think you still in a lot of years still would have had the SEC be good. Like if Nick Saban wasn't at Bama, then guess what? In 2009, it's not Texas winning the championship because Saban's not there. It's Florida winning the championship with Tim Tebow. They were the second best team in college football that year, in my opinion. It's just they had to beat Bama in the SEC title game and couldn't. And the winner of that game was going to win the title, in my opinion.
Yes. And then more recently, I think Georgia's run starts sooner than 2021.
That's a good point.
They
win it in 17.
Yeah.
They win the title in 2017 if it's not for Alabama.
Yep. So I'm with you completely. I still think it would be SEC dominance. It just wouldn't be like 60% one team.
Right. It wouldn't have just been Bama. It would have been Bama, and then Florida might have had another one. And there might have been years too, if you think about this, there might have been years where a team got knocked out because of Bama, that if it wasn't for Bama beating them in the regular season, maybe they go on and win a title. Like I said, like 2009, it's not that Florida does. If Bama's not there, then Texas is the champ. No, Florida would have been in the title game. They'd have been 13-0 because their only loss that year was to, I believe, Alabama in the SEC title game. I think they were both 12-0 going to that game, if I remember correctly. And then they went out and annihilated Cincinnati in the bowl game. And even if Brian Kelly was coaching that game, and that's exactly why Brian Kelly left, because he knew they were going to get annihilated by Florida. Florida would have won the title, with all due respect to. And I actually think Florida would have beat Texas worse than Alabama did. Because, again, football is a game of matchups. And Bama was the one team that could physically go toe-to-toe with Florida. I think that Florida team would have smoked Texas in that game. Smoked Texas. Because Texas didn't match up as well with them as they did Bama. That's what people have to understand. Just because this team beat that team doesn't mean that team is going to beat this other team by the same amount, because it's about matchups. Well, they beat that team and we beat them, so we would have beat that team more. Not necessarily, because that was a good matchup for them. This wasn't a good match. Like, that's what I think the reason Notre Dame and Georgia have played such close games over the years is because Georgia hasn't had necessarily a Devontae Smith and guys like that. It was they're going to run the football and they're going to do that. Well, that kind of played right into what Notre Dame was good at in 17 and 19 and again in 24, is they couldn't do the things that would have exploited Notre Dame. They weren't the throwing team. They had Jake Fromm at quarterback, not Tua, not Joe Burrow. And 2024, they were a ground and pound team, and Notre Dame was just better at that than they were. Whereas another team, Ohio State's going to present look, I don't think Ohio State's offensive line was as good as Georgia's talent-wise. I mean, they played better at the time, but it was the fact that they could do things skill-wise that Georgia couldn't do also. And so I think they outplayed Notre Dame. I'm just making the point that, like, even if it would have been the same exact matchup in the trenches as the Georgia game was, Ohio State would have scored more than 10 points because they had significantly superior skill on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
So it's about matchups.
Agreed.
So good question there. A couple more. This from Time Cone. Is this the last 12 team playoff? When does it go to 16 or 24? I don't know. I would think this is the last 12 team playoff. I think next off season they'll figure something out, but I'm hoping that the SEC holds firm and doesn't let it go to 24. But I think we're probably in the last year of the 12 team playoff.
Yeah. Yep.
And let's get a couple more here real quick. All right, let's get to here.
From Josh Buffo, the College Football Playoff Committee in 2025 basically saying Alabama was better than Notre Dame is the biggest travesty since
Florida State was left out in 2023.
Correct.
Yeah.
From Archer, resident Ohio State fan in the chat, like IU last year, who is a team that could win the national title and absolutely shock the nation doing it?
Notre Dame. I'm dead serious with that answer. Notre Dame, Archer, because here's the thing. You won't be shocked by that, Archer, because you're someone who, yes, you're an Ohio State fan and you tend to have very pro Ohio State takes and things like that, but you're also someone who can recognize, hey, that team's pretty good, that team's pretty good, but a lot of the college football world still lives in this blind reality of Notre Dame's not athletic. They're not this. They're not that. They play a soft schedule. Georgia fans were shocked that Notre Dame could play with them in 2024. And that's why they've made a million excuses since then of they just can't accept the fact that just Notre Dame was better than us. They refuse to accept that reality. And because they're still living in the world of this is 1999 Notre Dame football. And there's all these stereotypes. Like even some Notre Dame people. I got into a debate with a former Notre Dame player in 2024. I made a comment during the SEC title game that Notre Dame had better athletes in Texas and Georgia, and he was incredulous. And he was like Arch Manning's more athletic than Riley Leonard. Notre Dame's linebackers don't run fast, and I'm just like, dude, this isn't when you played at Notre Dame. This is a different team, and it just. There's still Notre Dame people that don't realize like this team is athletic. They didn't lose to Miami and Texas A&M because of athletes. They lost to, one athlete in the nickel, but like they got beat in the trenches by Miami. When CJ had time to throw, they actually did some things against Miami. They just didn't give him enough time to throw. So, because Miami whooped their butt in the trenches. So, I think the college football world would be shocked because a lot of the college football world, to be honest, is not overly knowledgeable on things outside of their own team and leagues. And they get all their information from social media. They don't really study things. They jump onto the join a conference nonsense, soft schedule nonsense. I debated a guy from Miami who said Notre Dame had a cupcake schedule. And I'm like, what? Ohio State can say that. If I'm debating an Ohio State guy, he can say that. I'm like, yes, sir, compared to you, it is a cupcake schedule. You know what I mean? You cover Miami, bro, and you're a good dude, but that's a terrible take for a team whose second best opponent is Wake Forest. But it's so easy to jump into that narrative that so many people buy into about Notre Dame that I just think if Notre Dame won it all, that would shock the college football world. Because what's the one team, Archer, that you've heard it be said that team can't win a championship in modern football? Name one blue blood program that they say. Nobody says that about USC. Nobody says that about Texas. Nobody said that about. They'll never win a championship in modern football. No team has that said about them except for one, Notre Dame. Because most college football fans are kind of mid when it comes to their knowledge of anything outside of the very basics of their team.
Yep. Agreed completely. My newest favorite counter when people tell me that Notre Dame should join a conference is I just ask, okay, cool, which one? Yeah. Any one of them. Okay, so like the ACC, no, they suck. Right. How about the SEC? Well, they couldn't hang in the SEC. Okay, what about the Big Ten? Well, they already have 18 teams. Okay, you're kind of answering it for us then, if you think about it. And yes, they could hang with the SEC. Different conversation for a different day. But yeah, I'm with you.
So he said, follow-up, I totally see where you're coming from, BD. I was thinking more along the lines of a team that isn't historically good in preseason outside the top 15, but I absolutely get where you're coming from. That would be a little bit tougher to think through because again, if it's going to shock the world, I don't know that I can point to that team and say, okay, that's going to shock the world. But me and all my wisdom and ability to predict the future knows where this one is going to go. But let me just take a stab at it. So let me pull up the college football preseason top 25, ESPN, because I think that's the only one that has one. So let's go outside the top 10 that would shock the world and is capable of shocking us. Like BYU's not winning a championship. Michigan's not winning a championship. Penn State. I mean, would Alabama winning it shock the college football world? I mean, that's a team outside top 15 but like it's still Bama. Yeah, I don't think that would be one. I'll tell you one, Trev. I don't know if people think I say this, if USC's as good as what people think they're going to be, I mean, does that shock the college football world? Or is it because everybody thinks so highly of them that if they're good, that wouldn't shock anybody?
I was about to say, like, it would shock me, but for some crazy reason outside of the Notre Dame fan base, I believe I'm in the minority of saying I just don't get what it is with USC. So I think everybody else is like, dude, Jade Maevas is like, yeah, he's mid.
Yeah.
But apparently he's the next Baker Mayfield / Kyler Murray / Caleb Williams, allegedly. So whatever.
I got one for you, Trev. I got two.
Okay.
Two teams outside the top 15 that in some fashion could potentially shock the world. I got two, an ACC team and a Big 12 team. Louisville, Houston. If everything goes right for those teams, look, Louisville, the quarterback pickup ends up being their version of Fernando Mendoza. They got an elite defensive lineman. They got skill talent. Like, they got a great offensive mind as their head coach. Schedule sets up nicely for them to be able to get into the playoff and matchups go their way. And I mean, think about it. Like Indiana, the matchups kind of worked in their favor in the playoff. They got a team that had no business being in the playoff in the quarterfinals. And then they played a good Oregon team, but a little bit of a beat up Oregon team that they'd already played before. And then they get Miami in the championship game, like a team that Louisville's beaten recently. So Louisville and Houston, and perfect world, everything goes right. That would be a team that it would shock the world that I think actually has a chance to if everything goes perfectly for them and other situations could maybe do that. What do you think about that?
I like that. I like those picks a lot.
Yeah. So those would be my two that I think actually in some crazy scenario could actually pull it off. Because again, it's not going to be some out of nowhere SEC team or Big Ten team, because like Indiana's not a shock to win the championship. It should not have been Indiana had no business being ranked outside the top 15 last year. First of all, they were a playoff team the year before. Like that was more of a bias against a team that's not considered a blue blood. There's nobody else like that, in my opinion, that is underranked that should have been ranked higher. There's Missouri, Tennessee. I don't see those teams as being capable of it. I think if that's going to happen, it's going to come from a Big 12 or an ACC team, in my opinion.
Yeah, the toughest part with Indiana, and like we get that question a lot. I get that question like from friends, like, "Hey, who could the next Indiana be?" I don't want to say never, but hindsight, knowing what we know now about the landscape of college football, it makes sense why it was possible. And I don't know for Indiana. I don't know if we're ever going to see it again. Indiana has the largest alumni base in the entire country. Like
Indiana does?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So and then
how many kids go to Indiana?
Well, I mean, you got to think, like, just from the IU Bloomington school, I think they probably have somewhere around 30 to 40,000 undergrads.
Oh, so when you say IU, you're talking about like also all IUSB and okay, IU.
Yeah, because when you go to IUSB,
gotcha.
You get a degree from Indiana University.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So
I gotcha.
They have the largest alumni base in the entire country. And then when you start factoring in guys like Mark Cuban, who were part of that donor base, and, being able to put together the roster that they did, it was a unique situation. They went and found a championship caliber head coach that did it at a lower level. Now, combined with the transfer portal in the early stages and the amount of donor money that school has potentially, I just don't know if we're ever going to see it again.
Yeah.
Makes
total sense.
That's what makes it tough. Yeah. When you go back and when you just think of Indiana wins national titles, like, you mean perennially the worst football program in the history of the FBS.
Yeah.
First team ever to 700 losses. But then when you put all factors at play, knowing what we know now, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not know that. That's wild. I would not have guessed that. I'd have picked 25 schools before I would have picked Indiana. That's all. Like Penn State would have definitely been one because like that's such a big campus, and I grew up in Ohio, and there's not as many now. A lot of the branches have closed down, but like that's a giant school with all those. So I would not have picked Indiana just because it's a smaller state. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have guessed that a smaller state would have that many of those. So that's awesome. It's a good little nugget right there, Trevor. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, Trev, that's going to do it for today's show. We went a little bit long there, but you guys had so many great questions. A lot of great questions. Ballpeen had a great question about zone versus man. That's a great Ballpeen. Maybe ask that on the message board. I know you're a member. That'd be a great message board question about the zone defense and different things like that. ICURN, how would you rate Noah Grubb's arm strength? Is he strong enough to make NFL throws? I think Noah has enough arm talent that if his mind gets where it needs to be, and I think it can, that's how he wins. But yes, I said this to Trevor yesterday. Noah Grubbs is what Steve Angeli fans thought Steve Angeli was. And I mean that in a complimentary way, where he's winning with grit, with his toughness, with his mind, and his arm talent's good enough to make the plays that you need to make to win. So he can make NFL throws. Is he going to make NFL throws as impressively as CJ Carr and Dante Moore and guys like that? No. But that would be one. So good ones. Jay Melvin, Brian, who do you think USC beats the worst, OSU, Oregon, or Indiana? I personally think it's going to be Indiana, even though I thought like USC and Oregon more this year. I think USC is going to lose all three of them. That's my prediction. That's it, Trev. That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks, everybody. All the super chats. Appreciate you. Great chat today. You guys were awesome. And once again, you all stepped up to the plate with some amazing questions today. Very, very, very well done. We appreciate you all very much. Make sure 5 o'clock, you guys tune in to IB Nation Sports Talk. Let's see what they're talking about today. They are talking about season excitement, NIL salary cap, and they're going to have their own mailbag as well. So you're going to want to check that out, Sean and the guys, tonight. 5 o'clock here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Before you head out of here, folks, see that little thumbs up button, that like button. Check that out. The magazine we hope to have published here over the next week for sure. That's going to be for message board members only. So if you thought about signing up, now's the perfect time to do that. We'll be back tomorrow with another show. Not sure what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll come up with something fun. But thank you all so much for being with us so much. Of course, as always, make sure you are – best way to support us is to not only watch the show, like the show, listen to the show on the podcast platform, but also, best way, sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Trevor, thank you so much, man. Great show today. Very well done. Have an awesome rest of your day, everybody. And thank you truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for being a part of this community at Irish Breakdown. It does mean the world to us. And, you know, I as the son of a man who had to work his tail off driving a truck and a mom who had to drive over state of Ohio selling balloons to put food on the table, the fact that I get to support my family talking Notre Dame football, it's because of y'all. And we appreciate that so very much. We know how blessed we are, and you guys are that blessing. So thank you for being with us, and thank you for everything you do and your constant support for what we're doing here at Irish Breakdown. So have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.